We are on air. We are in session with the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission special called session and agenda setting session. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Davenport.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Link. Here. Wright.
Present.
Denson.
Here.
Hool.
Present.
Myers. Thornton.
Here.
Handy.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Purpose of the meeting, consider some new business listed below. You'll see the agendas out in the hallway. We will have citizen input first on items 1 through 5 of new business under suspension of the rules. Do we have any public input? Mr. Sergeant at Arms.
Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem. I thought the special call session was canceled for lack of quorum.
That was the executive session.
Executive session. My
Yeah.
apologies. Yeah.
Items 1 through 5, the contingency request for the Sheriff's Office, the Regional Water Plan, SPLOST 2020 Fire Department Equipment, Eviction Prevention Program, or the resolution on reapportionment. Any public comment? Seeing none, we will move behind the rail. Do I hear a motion to consider these items under suspension of the rules?
So moved. Second.
Motion from Hool, second from Davenport. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Okay, item number 1, FY21 contingency request for Clarke County Sheriff's Office budget. Do I hear a motion on this item?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Wright, second from Denson. Mr. Attorney, read the, yes, sir?
Ordinance to amend the FY 2021 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide funding for expenses related to hospitalization and pharmacy costs outside of the jail health services contract and overtime due to staffing shortages in the Sheriff's Department and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Commissioner Wright, any comments?
No comment. I'm ready to vote.
All right, Commissioner Denson is the seconder, sir.
Yes, I do have a few comments I wanted to bring up on this, and definitely support us doing this budget resolution for the Sheriff's Department. But I do want us to, in the future, be looking at these things a little bit closer. With this, we have one individual, who was arrested under previous prosecutor and held in our jail and brought in and incurred more than $1 million in healthcare expenses. More than $1 million. And then that individual has, my understanding, since been released and is no longer being held. So I think this shows sometimes that it is not cost effective for us to be incarcerating individuals, especially when sometimes costs go over $1 million. $1 million in taxpayer funds, and then we let the person go for other reasons. Figured out a way to do that. So I think it's honestly, and this one is pretty egregious. I will say, Mayor Pro Tem, and I would actually like for us to if there is an avenue for us to be able to investigate the situation of how this happened exactly. That one individual who was held in our jail had over $1 million of healthcare costs, and then was subsequently released and no longer even being held. But I think this shows that we need to take a criminal justice reform is a real need here. And we need to be better analyzing why we're holding individuals and what the end game is here so that we can be good stewards of public dollars and also still making sure that our city is safe. But this just shows that I think we need to do better at this. But again, I will say that this has nothing to do with the Sheriff's Department. This is not their fault. They are doing what they have to do, so I'm happy to support this right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Denson. Yes, Mr. Hool.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, I'd like to echo Commissioner Denson on the need to look into this, especially the case that's over $1 million. I mean, we talk a lot about smaller sums and debate quite at length. That is no small sum to incarcerate someone who's disabled. I think it raises some questions about the healthcare provider that they've got. Again, I'm not putting that on the current sheriff, but we're dealing with some residue of past administrations here, including the desire of the previous DA to pursue this person, but I'd like to understand more about how we got here. The other thing I'd implore this body to look into as we begin to look at the budget for next year. The overtime costs, I don't think can be understated as a key factor here too. And I think we need to re-examine the STEP program that we passed to address the way it's negatively impacting some offices. It seems especially pertinent to recruiting people with experience, also known as lateral transfers. I think that's something that we've heard from a number of people about. I've certainly spoken with a number of people in our government about needing to look at again. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hool. Points well taken. Might create a platform to have some conversations with our current district attorney about the incarceration policies of the new office. Considering the old office, we're left with this $1 million plus bill. Hearing no other comments, all in favor of this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, do I hear a motion on item 2, the Regional Water Plan Seed Fund Grants Fund application?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Hool, second from Denson. Mr. Attorney,
An ordinance to amend the FY 2022 operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide grant funding if awarded from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division Regional Water Plan Seed Grant Program for expenses related to stormwater infrastructure and for other purposes.
Commissioner Hool.
Yeah, I just want to thank staff for finding money to help us pay for this. We need it wherever we can get it. Anyone who's watching from home now or later, if you look at the agenda item attachment number 1, you'll see a long list of infrastructure that we really need to address. And this is honestly only going to make a small dent in one of those, but I'm super appreciative that staff has spearheaded this to help us pay for it. And would also just like to let the public know that our stormwater infrastructure is something that we really need to take seriously funding in the future. And, you know, thanks to everybody for contributing to the stormwater fund through the stormwater fees, because that is the bulk of how we get here. Thanks.
Mr. Denson.
Just great job, the staff and our stormwater department for finding this money.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, SPLOST 2020 Project 5, Fire Department Equipment Subproject number 2. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Hool,
Second?
second from Commissioner Parker. Commissioner Hool.
I just want to thank the Oversight Committee for the work they've been doing. I don't think we can overstate how much work it is to not only dig into a SPLOST or a T-SPLOST, but then for half those members to hang around for years after. And I really appreciate the work they did, as well as staff did to get us here, and looks good.
Thanks. Commissioner Parker.
Nothing to add.
All right. Any other comments against? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4, Eviction Prevention Program. Do I hear a motion?
I motion to put this on hold. Again,
Motion to hold until,
our November 2nd meeting.
motion to hold to November 2nd meeting.
For what reason?
Do I hear a second?
Did y'all want to hold it? Or y'all recommend holding?
Hearing no second, the motion dies. Do I hear any other motion considering item 4?
Yeah, I'm looking for what staff's recommendation is. Go ahead, Tim, if you have it.
I'll make actually a motion for us to approve the contract that for our applicant that applied here as them being the most suitable applicant for this program, and to direct staff to do all work needed to move forward contracts and funding for it.
Second?
Motion to approve the contract for the bidder.
And that would be a
Second.
substitute motion.
Substitute motion. Or
No, it's,
just a-
there's only one motion.
It's a motion, yeah, it's a main motion.
Oh, yeah, right,
Yeah, that's
second.
fine. And then second from Commissioner Parker. Okay, Commissioner Denson, you have the floor to speak in support of your motion.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And with this, and I'm happy to hear staff. I guess the first thing I do is have a question on. We had them go through the federal risk assessment, since this will be using Athens Rescue Funds, and I wonder if that risk assessment came through okay.
So there's an inquiry, Mr. Manager.
So
the thing in all of this is the risk assessment asks a number of questions about the applicant's experience, in running such programs. And this is a group with a lot of talents. There's not many folks that have run an eviction prevention program per se. They have some limited experience with federal. There is no pass-fail with the risk assessment. It's merely a continuum of things that they either have done or haven't done. We don't have any guidance from the federal government about what's a good score or not. It just gives us further insight as to how, if we were to partner with them, the things that we might want to pay more attention to when we're doing compliance reporting. So I'm afraid it doesn't give us a lot of insight into whether they're a great candidate or a terrible candidate. It's just what they have and haven't done in the past.
I hear you. Okay, no, that clarification is appreciated. I make this motion because it is definitely a dire situation for us to move forward to be preventing evictions that are happening here in this community. And as this program is modeled on a program in Gwinnett County, which has now been identified by the federal government as one of the most outstanding eviction prevention programs happening right now in the nation. And looking over the application myself and being able to meet with the applicants and have them answer questions, which I know a number of us did, I feel like it is, we are in a good place for us to go ahead and move forward with this program rather than delaying this by sending it back to an RFP with absolutely no certainty that we would get new applicants, even for that new RFP. Yet it would delay this program and thus being able to help people facing eviction till February of next year, which to me is, we just can't wait that long. And I know there's many families in this community that can't wait that long.
Commissioner Parker?
My support for the motion also stems from having spoken to other housing providers in Athens and not feeling convinced that if we re-release the RFP, we will get new proposals. Also having met with the applicants here, feeling fairly confident that with some support, both from staff and getting in touch with the folks that run Home First Gwinnett, where the very successful program, where the program has been very successful, that this too can be a good success.
Anyone against the motion? Commissioner Wright?
I wanted to make a comment, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Thornton.
I definitely want to support this 100%. I admit that we've tried everything, working with DCA, and it's never that I was totally against reset. I just knew that last year we had 5 organizations that helped people with rent and utilities, and they did a good job. But at the end of the day, the longer we keep dragging this out, people are going to be evicted. And I think we can work out the glitches as we go along, if there are any glitches. But we need to not let people have to face the holidays and eviction at the same time. If DCA is not going to step up and do their part, we need to do our part. This is not about politics. This is about people getting ready to get put on the street right before the holidays. So we really need to move fast on this. We're really late, I think, and this applicant has jumped through a lot of hoops and answered all of our questions, and now we need to go ahead on and help folks that are facing eviction. This is nothing personal with nobody. This is about people who are going to be on the street, while many of us, when we vote, we're not going to be facing that dilemma. So I'm going to be voting for the substitute motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Thornton. Anyone against the motion like to speak? Commissioner Wright?
Yes, I'm prepared to make a substitute motion. I do believe that the barriers of this original RFP, as well as the timeline of the process, it was very rushed, I think, from a commission-defined option. And then we got emails talking about barriers within the request for proposal process, and I appreciate staff addressing that and being ready to send it out again and casting the net. So I'm going to make a substitute motion that we go with what is in the packet to do, that we do not approve the funding for the September 13 proposal submitted by Athens First Development Corporation. B, authorize staff to issue a revised request for proposal to select an agency partner to coordinate with the magistrate court, landlords, tenants to prevent evictions and to provide rental assistance to households in
Gotcha.
need.
So substitute motion to adopt
So
the
that's-
staff recommendation.
That's right.
Gotcha.
And so,
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Hamby. All right, explain your motion, Commissioner Wright.
okay, so, sorry, I got ahead of myself.
No, you're good.
So I think that the barriers that were within the original request for proposal, I appreciate staff addressing that, and this resubmitting it out to the public without some of those barriers, I think, cast the net. Typically, we have at least 3 proposals that we weigh against each other, and we end up with the lowest bid. And at this point, the price, I think, on this current bid is awfully high, especially without a comparison.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamby is the seconder.
I think everything's been stated that needs to be stated.
Okay. Anybody like to speak against the motion?
I think I would like to speak against the motion.
Okay, one moment, Commissioner Thornton. Hold on one second. Commissioner Hool was recognized. One second.
Oh, I'm
We'll
sorry.
get right to you. Go, Commissioner Hool.
Yeah, my hesitancy with going with the staff recommendation is we're going to delay this even further with a lot of uncertainty about where that leaves us. I mean, I don't know if that means that we lose the one applicant we've got and don't get any others or what. I think there were a number of organizations many of us anticipated would apply in the first round that didn't. And I've spoken with at least some of them and haven't gotten a clear understanding of if any of them would even apply again. My understanding is that AFDC, while a new organization, seems to have a lot of their ducks in a row, and I guess the sense I get is we really needed to act on this months ago, and while this might not be the ideal way to have gotten here, I feel good enough about AFDC's application that I guess I'd like to better understand from staff what the reason would be for denying beyond the lack of experience they have in this field, because that's really all I got from the staff report.
Well, from our perspective, it's not that AFDN, they can't do the work. It's that there was such a tight timeline on this, and we did get feedback from a couple of organizations that may have been interested. But more importantly than that, we did meet at your direction with representatives from the respondent, and there were some improvements to the RFP that are important. And DCA is an important asset here, if you will, and there's a lot of that's been said about what they will or won't do. And I know, that I think they, as recently last couple of weeks, made an overture to the mayor that they may be willing to do more than what they've done in the past. So that's confusing things for sure. But with conversations with the applicant as well as some other nonprofits, the RFP could have been simplified. One is not requiring them to work with DCA explicitly. That may be a hurdle that we need to explore. The formula for the negotiated settlement. So just like Gwinnett, it was an index scale depending on how much you owed, how much the landlord would get. And I think that those that we spoke with, including the applicant, that just necessarily complicates it. And you want to give the flexibility to the person, the entity in that role to be able to negotiate. There's more flexibility needed to help stabilize the tenant. So currently, the way the RFP is written, it is a retrospective payment, like get them. And I think that was based on the Gwinnett project reset at the time, where you get them stabilized and then they have to have some responsibility to pay the forward payments. But now the applicant and others said, if you could get some prospective payments in there, that would be more helpful. And so that would be what we would propose to go back in the RFP. And then just a little extra time and explain what you're trying to accomplish. So it's not so much a vote against the applicant, it's just that it was very rushed. We could improve the RFP. You may have some more interest if you put it back out.
Sure. I guess what I'm trying to make sense of is like acknowledging that this RFP process could have gone better and we've learned things from how it went. Is there any reason staff sees to not move forward with the proposal we did get from the original RFP, even though it came through an unideal request for proposal process? Nonetheless, that applicant has been engaged with, and it sounds like you all arrived at a better place. So is there any reason staff sees for not moving forward with the applicant based on what's been learned in the past 2 weeks?
If I may, we would need a revised budget, so we really don't have a concrete scope of work at this point in time. That could be ironed out, but that's, the scope of work that we have is based off of an RFP that they thought was not ideal, if that makes sense.
So, said another way, I mean, we can negotiate what the scope of work looks like, depending on what the attorney says. We may have to return to you for approval of a contract, but there's more work to be done as far as deciding exactly how the program is going to go. And so I would just say if you start to change some significant parts of the program from what the RFP was advertised, and that's not what other folks, maybe that kept somebody out. So, we can, to answer your question, I think I've explained the reasons why staff would recommend that we refine the RFP, we go back out for a longer period. But if the commission's so inclined, we would, if you approve this, then we would negotiate with the respondent to come up with a workable scope and budget that we may have to return to you to say, this is what we've ended up at. So Commissioner Denson, I guess, and I'd look to the attorney to say, you would name the most responsible offerer and authorize staff to negotiate a contract. That's how that would go if you did that.
Okay. All right. Anyone to speak in favor of the substitute motion now?
You didn't respond. Oh, no, you didn't give me my moment, Mayor Pro Tem.
It's coming. I know you're against, but we got to go in favor and against. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone want to speak in favor now? All right, go ahead, Commissioner Thornton.
So I'm against, right? Let me make sure I'm right.
Yes.
I'm against. Okay. I do think that improving the RFP, I understand that, but again, I'm thinking about families that are going to be on the street. Now, if there's a way that the manager's office can work with this applicant and let's start helping people, these folks need help now. And we cannot wait on DCA, especially since we got the money to do it. Now, I am a real strong advocate for a process with the American Rescue Plan money. But there comes a time when things are an emergency. And if you're not facing an eviction, and I'm really kind of disturbed with the manager's office, because I think the first RFP.
Well, let's speak to the motion. Let's speak to the motion, Commissioner Thornton.
So that's my point. I'm still against.
Okay. Any other?
I just have a question.
Okay, question? Sure.
So Commissioner just had mentioned that it will be February if we release it out, the RFP process. I'm not against the AFDC and helping individuals, but with a $3 million price tag, I just want to make sure that there's a wide net of people, wide variety of folks getting help from many partners, and even though if AFDC, either way, what I'm trying to get at is just a question of where did I miss? If we put it back out, it would be February till this gets started. Manager Williams.
Did you get that, Manager Williams?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes. So after talking with other folks, a reasonable timeline that we would put forth is, that there be a conversation with nonprofits in the next 5 to 10 days, that the RFP would be released within 30 days, and, evaluation about a week, Mayor and Commission approval at the December meeting, and then it's going to take time to contract route and execution, and then there is a startup time, and I know that when y'all feel like, well, we vote on it, then it's going, but they have to hire somebody or or those things run concurrently. So we would allow up to 60 days, but hopefully sooner than that to get the program implemented.
Thank you for providing that timeline. Okay, call the roll, please, Clerk Spratlin, on the substitute motion to adopt the staff recommendation.
Wright,
Yes.
Dennison,
No.
Poole,
No.
Thornton. Thornton,
Commissioner Thornton? Oh,
I think we know where she is on that.
Yeah, I think I put her down as a no. No,
you want to call her back? Call her back real quick.
She's out on the west coast.
706, I got the number. 706-202-4437.
No,
So we lost you, Commissioner, but you're back, man.
no.
All right.
I'm back and it's
All
still
right.
no.
All right, Madam Clerk, Commissioner Thornton has voted no.
Hamby,
Yes.
Davenport,
No.
Parker,
On the,
no,
Yes.
Link. No. 2 yes, 6 no.
thank you, Madam Clerk. Back to the original motion to award the contract to AFDC for, I mean, we can do for and against a little more if we'd like, or,
I just,
Roll call.
I just wanted to clarify the motion, so I had the right language that was in there as.
okay.
Attorney Drake, could you clarify what the optimal language would be in the situation?
I think the
again?
manager said it better than I could. I agree
Okay.
with what he said. Say that again if you remember.
Well, the commission declare the Athenian First Development Corporation as the most responsive offerer to the RFP and direct the manager to have staff negotiate a scope and subsequent contract with AFDC. That's the motion, but the question, Attorney Drake, is would that require that contract and scope to be approved subsequently by the mayor and commission, or is
I
it?
think it could be either way. I mean, you could say you want to have it come back to be approved by the commission or authorize the mayor to execute the negotiated contract.
Okay,
Because we don't always bring every contract to y'all
Right.
that you vote and approve. Sometimes they're there attached to the agenda items. Sometimes you authorize all the necessary documents to be executed.
I guess the only difference here is we just don't have the final scope nailed down so that everybody's aware of it.
Right.
And the
Well, it
final
may be better,
budget.
given the nature of these funds and the sensitivity, that we come back, we can be here in February. I mean, I'm not February, what am I saying? That was what, we'll be here in November.
Yeah.
November the, what date? It's our Tuesday.
Second.
Yeah.
Second, pretty
second,
quick.
yeah. Okay.
So maybe it would be a good idea to bring it back.
Okay, so, yeah, I'll take that, so to declare AFDC the most responsive offer to the RFP, and to direct the manager's office to negotiate the scope, contract, and then bring it back before the commission
For the November meeting.
for November 2nd meeting.
Okay.
Can I offer a friendly amendment?
Oh, I'm really not into those.
Can I offer an unfriendly amendment?
You can move to amend a motion.
Can I move to amend?
Yes, sir, always.
I would like to move to amend the motion to direct staff to negotiate a revised budget and scope. Because I believe that was what Manager Williams suggested.
I guess I assumed
There's
that the
a-
budget would be included in the contract.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to restate it, to amend the budget and the scope
To
of the
amend the language
contract?
just to add the word budget to, because we're directing staff to look at the budget and scope, not just the scope. Correct?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Go ahead and explain your motion, Commissioner Hool.
I feel like it kind of spoke for itself.
Okay, Commissioner Davenport.
You pretty much said it.
Anyone against amending this motion to direct staff to amend the motion, the budget and the scope? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Okay. The ayes have it. Back to,
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
I have a question. I just wanted to get through that vote.
yes,
But I do have a
I
question.
think we're done.
yes, we still have a
now
motion to
that-
vote on. Go ahead.
Now that we have put this back into the staff's purview in their hand, what kind of timeline is staff predicting? Because if this drags out until February,
It's not.
We wouldn't have accomplished anything.
No, it's not dragging out till February, but we still have a motion on the floor to award the contract. Would anybody else
We
like
don't have a time span that we could lock this in from the manager's office?
2 months? Is that what you're saying? What are you saying? November 2nd, the contract is going to come back before us for approval.
Are you good with this?
Okay, that's fine.
Scope of services
Yep.
in a reasonable amount of time. I'll do the best I can. Yeah, I'm trying to make it happen.
Well, I mean-
This is important.
It is, but I just want to make sure that we're backing up from November 2nd to understand, because, there is the drawing up the contract, so Attorney Drake, not to put you on the spot, but in order for me to answer Commissioner Thornton's, if I can make November 2nd, when do you need the scope of services? Because that is 2 weeks from today.
Well, I'd like to have it at least a week before.
All right, so we got a week to do this,
Yeah.
which is the rest of this week.
I'm
really.
good as long as
Okay.
you have a realistic timeline that doesn't take us to February or January.
And the February one, Commissioner Thornton, was if we reissue the RFP,
Yeah.
we'll do much better than that with this vote tonight.
So worst
I'm good
case,
with that.
so worst
I'm
case scenario, the consideration might get delayed 2 weeks, mid-November for agenda setting,
Worst
something like
case
that.
scenario,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the original motion to award the contract to AFDC.
Dennison,
Yes.
Poole,
Yes.
Thornton,
Yes,
Hamby,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Link. Yes. Wright.
No?
You said yes?
No.
I'm a no.
Right is a no.
No. Okay. 7-1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, item number 5, resolution to request the assistance of the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections in registration and drawing new commission district boundaries. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. I move that we approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve the resolution from Commissioner Parker, second from Denson. Go ahead, Commissioner Parker.
In brief, I think collaborating with the Board of Elections on this is the most neutral way for us to move forward, given how political the nature of the work is in redrawing our district boundaries. And I want to also thank our GIS staff for providing their input thus far.
Thank you. Commissioner Denson.
Commissioner Parker said it well.
Thank you. Anyone would like to speak against the motion? Commissioner Wright.
Yes, I would almost feel like we should update the resolution because it says that at the work session, a desire to request the assistance of the Board of Elections. I think it could say 2 commissioners express the desire. I just think that we should, and maybe it's a misinterpretation, but here we are. We have this in front of us. I think with the short timeline that this resolution has for November 11, this is a huge task. And our election staff is well underway in early voting for a November 2 election in our community. And by passing this, we are basically dumping a workload on people who already have more than a full-time work already assessed with our elections. I disagree that our Board of Elections is a neutral body. And I think that also using our community's Board of Elections and the election staff to work on commission remapping without even involving our partner Board of Elections, Board of Education, who is our other sort of partner in local elections and needing maps. I think we're sort of hogging some resources there with it. So I'm against this all the way around.
Thank you. Speaking for the motion, Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I am certainly in support of this. I would like this commission to stay out of this process as much as possible. We are required to actually vote on the maps that we forward to the legislature. But I believe the Board of Elections is the most efficient and fastest way to get this done. And I have spoken with a couple members of that body, and they are eager to perform this task. We do have staff that has the data and the software to pull this off. We certainly don't have time to create an independent commission as has been done in the past, unless we want to delay that. And if we do delay that, we risk the legislators bringing up their own maps, which is the last thing we want to do. So I believe, the Board of Elections, which is an independent body, technically they are not elected officials. Elected officials should not have their fingers in this process on the front end. So I will definitely be supporting the resolution.
Thank you. Anyone against the motion would like to speak? Commissioner Hamby?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I agree with what Commissioner Wright has to say, and Commissioner Link actually made the case for being against this motion, because if you want to be at arm's length, you shouldn't really be speaking to members of the body about the maps or about anything of that sort. I mean, we're not, that in itself involves you in the process of drawing the maps. I don't know what type of, you may have just asked them if they want to do it. I don't know, but by the virtue of us also appointing the members of the Board of Elections to that doesn't put us at any sort of arm's length about the map, especially speaking to the individual members of the body about this. And to your point, we can pass whatever we want to pass, but at the end of the day, the legislature can draw whatever maps they want to. We can send a map that looks as good as anything. I just know this from past experience that the legislatures can draw whatever map they want to draw. But certainly I don't agree with this process and agree with the sentiments expressed by Commissioner Wright.
Anyone else would like to speak for the motion? Commissioner Denson?
A statement, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, for? Are you for the motion?
I am for.
Okay, go ahead.
And I guess I have a question. While we decide on the workload or if the Board of Elections could handle this, I guess my question is directed to the county manager. Manager Williams, have you discussed this with the director of the Board of Elections? And if so, what was her feeling or comment?
Thank you. And both Joseph D'Angelo, our Chief Data Officer, and Charlotte have spoken and worked on this together. And I think the key here is the expectation that I believe is worded in the resolution, and it's not for the Board of Elections necessarily to get into a block-by-block redrawing, but rather for the commission to signal, what are the goals and what are the guidelines that you would like to be seen drawn into a map for reapportionment, which is captured here, and for the Board of Elections to look at the map that's drawn and presented by staff and say, does it meet these guidelines? As opposed to, we're going to move this block over here and move this district over here and redraw this person out. That is not the way I think this resolution contemplates the Board of Elections' involvement. And so I do appreciate, though, the fact that this is right in the midst of an election, and do want to say that it is unfortunate that we got a late release of census data and then an early deadline from the state that's kind of compressed this here, making it more complicated. So Commissioner Thornton, to say that, I think, Director Sosby has certainly got enough to do, but I think she's able to work on this if asked to.
Thank you, Manager Williams. Okay.
Thank you. Well,
Okay.
I will be voting for this. I think that the fact that it does have to come back to us and for our approval, but the ultimate goal, I think Commissioner Hamby said, is going to go to the legislature. So I'm voting for this so we can move it along.
Thank you, Commissioner Thornton. Did you have something, Manager Williams?
I do. Just in the spirit of alternatives. So another alternative, if the commission was so inclined, is to have a subcommittee of commissioners and go to the Office of Reapportionment and work with their staff to redraw it. But as Commissioner Link stated earlier, in any case, it has to come back to the commission for approval. So,
Right.
so there are some alternatives to the resolution at hand.
Right, thank you. Anyone against the motion on the table would like to speak? Anyone against would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Parker,
Yes.
Blink,
Yes.
Wright,
Nope.
Denson,
Yes.
Hool,
Yes.
Thornton. Thornton,
Mr. Thornton.
Yes, yes, yes.
Hamby,
No.
Davenport,
Yes.
6 yes, 2 no.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That concludes the business of the special called session. I will consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion from Wright, second from Parker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Let's see, 6:45. Should we go right to the agenda setting?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go to the moon. All right, now we are in session with the agenda setting session. First up, we've got citizen input on the items recommended for the consent agenda, which include the American Rescue Plan Act relief grant funding for the airport, T-SPLOST taxiway A reconstruction, 2021 HUD grant, purchase of a crane truck, temporary waiver of certain parking fees in the decks, and SPLOST 2020 Project 20 Park and Facilities Improvements. Any public comment?
With a mask, please.
Ma'am, please put your mask on.
Yes, we are requesting. Thank you. We appreciate it. Hopefully, we won't have to wear these things forever.
People will just wear them regularly. Kind of like.
There she goes. That was enough.
If there's anybody else ready to make public comment, go ahead and get ready to come up behind our first speaker here.
On through 5.
And do you have a comment card?
I do.
That's great, so we'll spell your name right in the minutes.
I had plenty of time to fill that out, sitting outside of City Hall.
And your name is?
Not being allowed to come into a city hall where the people have an opportunity to speak.
And your name is?
My name
Thank
is
you.
Joan Roden,
Yes.
and I resent being sent outdoors. Well, there's seats everywhere around here empty by police escort out because you're not speaking at this moment. I stand before you tonight not to speak, to be heard. There's a distinct difference. You ask for responses on surveys. People respond, and sometimes in large numbers. But do you listen? I have grown to believe that you do not listen, nor do you actually care about public comment. When the mayor and commission put out a survey on the ACC government website, sanctioned by the mayor and commission, asking for responses to a question such as, do you believe these recommendations will improve community police relations, in reference to the civilian task force for the police department? Do you really want an answer? Do you? On that survey you asked, do you want a task force? 69% say, do you think there's a need for the task force? 69% said they strongly disagree, actually. Do you think that there is a need for the task force? And 86% of the people disagreed. You sit here tonight pretending that you are listening to the people, but the people of Athens are aware that you have an agenda to serve very small minority of people in Athens. You prove it every time you pass a mandate, an ordinance, a policy, or a resolution that does not reflect the will of the people of Athens-Clarke County. Because of this very confusing setup of roping off of City Hall, people are sitting outdoors, waiting to come in, not sure if they can come in, trying to follow the rules of the policemen outside and the very confusing instructions that you've put out there, while this City Hall is empty. There is something wrong here. I hope the people of Athens are going to stand up and say, We are not being treated correctly. We are not being heard. Thank you so much for allowing me to be in this commission room. What a privilege, what a privilege.
Thank you, Ms. Roden. We're trying our best to keep people safe, and we thank you for putting your mask on, absolutely. And we're going to work and do better about providing good instructions for public input. All right. Any other public input on the consent agenda items? American Rescue Plan, T-SPLOST, HUD. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I believe the previous comment was regarding item 13.
Yeah. If you'd like to, yeah, we're going to have public comment again for the Police Advisory Board Development Task Force later. Go ahead, sure.
My name is Sandra Metz. I'm not here to speak to the mayor or the city council tonight, commissioners tonight. I'm here to speak to the community of Athens, Georgia. You are not alone. If you were one of over 500 signatures on the petition against a homeless encampment, if you notice, Gordon Roden handed out a pamphlet, a manila envelope full of signatures against it. They did not even open it to see the signatures and the addresses and the comments of the 500 people that were on there. So I see the cameras moving around now, so you can't see my Facebook page. You are not alone. Join us on the Unrepresented Community of Athens, the Facebook page, the Unrepresented Community of Athens, Georgia, or call this phone number and join us. We have to have our voices heard because our commissioners are supposed to be representing all citizens of Athens-Clarke County, and they are not. The porta pot, $314,000. Do you live in a porta pot for $314,000? A house worth $314,000? No. They did a survey, but they didn't tell those people it is a single stall. One porta pot. One. It is not successful. Why we're using Portland as an example of success, I don't know, because they have not done anything with fidelity. Once again, you are not alone. Please join us. The Unrepresented Community of Athens, Georgia on Facebook. Are you wanting our police department back? They may have not defunded it completely, but we are 50% below in our police department. We have to keep our community safe, provide a good education and health care for us in Athens, Georgia. You are not alone. Join us. Thank you, Athens, citizens of Athens.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment on the consent agenda? Yeah.
I don't think that was on the agenda.
What items are up for discussion right now? Items 1 through 6?
Okay, public input on the consent agenda, the American Rescue Plan Act, the T-SPLOST taxiway reconstruction, the HUD grant, purchase of a crane truck, waiving parking fees, and the Parks and Facilities Improvement SPLOST. You can see on the agenda out there on the table. There are other opportunities as we move through the meeting to speak on the other items. There's, yes, another opportunity. And then planning, public input as well. All right, seeing none, let's come behind the rail. Item number 1, the American Rescue Plan Act on the consent agenda. Any colleague? Yeah, go ahead. Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm supportive of this grant acceptance, but I noticed that in the agenda item, it doesn't really detail what the impacts of COVID have been on the airport, which I feel like would justify better, more so than simply accepting free money because it's free, well, how this will be used to help the airport. So I was wondering if that could be reflected in the final agenda item when it's voted upon.
Andrew Williams, can you include some COVID impact data in the final agenda?
Sure, and just a quick answer is that it did impact travel. We had less fuel purchased at the airport, and I believe that the funding was going to offset the loss of fuel revenues at the airport. But we can include that, make that.
Thank you, Manager. Any other input, any CDOs coming out? Are we good with this? Keep it on consent?
Move to consent.
Okay, stays on consent. Number 2, we got the T-SPLOST taxiway reconstruction.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm speaking.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have, I've been kind of tied up. can we pull this off consent until I can, look at it a little bit more?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't want, please pull it from consent, thank you.
Okay. And so we'll move to number 2, the T-SPLOST 2018 Project 1 Taxiway Reconstruction. Any commissioner concerns about leaving this on consent? Commissioner Parker?
I wasn't sure whether to say this on the last time or this one, but this is an issue I brought up previously with regards to funding and other renovations, et cetera, at the airport and how that aligns with our 100% clean and renewable energy plan. Given that, according to what I could find online, a journey of 500 kilometers in a plane pollutes 10 to 50 times more than a high-speed electric train and 5 to 10 more times than a bus. And so I know that we're locked into things, we're locked into spending SPLOST funds the way the voters approved by referendum. But I just wanted this opportunity to bring that back to our attention again and see if, as we brought up, and I guess in our work session last week about our plan, encourage us to consider how and if continued expenditures of this kind align with that ultimate goal of hitting 100% clean and renewable energy by 2035.
Cool. Any other comments or CDOs maybe coming, or leave it on consent? Are we good? Okay. Number 3, the HUD grant approval, approving HCD make some grant applications for HUD. Commissioner Hamby?
Sure. I'd just like to remove this from consent, and I'll send some questions to Manager Williams to have answered before the voting session. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions on anybody's mind right now on this one? Okay. Item number 4, purchase of a crane truck. Any CDOs on this one, or going to leave it on consent? All right, crane truck. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it an SUV crane truck or a small compact one or energized?
No, it's a electric.
Electric, good.
Coal powered. All right, number 5, temporary waiver of certain parking fees in the downtown parking decks. This is, okay. Any CDOs or consternation? All right, leave that on consent. Give some relief to the downtown businesses affected by Clayton Street reconstruction. Number 6, SPLOST 2020 Project 20, parks and facilities improvements. Any consternation or CDOs brewing on this one? All right, leave it on consent. Okay, Madam Clerk, moving right along to our next opportunity for citizen input on old business, which will be the item number 7, recommendation on composition and mission of Human Relations Commission, and the new business of the water reclamation facility, awarding of contracts, pretty big ones, resolution to adopt the Northeast Georgia Regional Solid Waste Management Plan, and then 10 through 16, which includes community benefit agreements submitted by agencies, SPLOST 2020, Government Operations Committee review of recommendations of Police Advisory Board, and the HOME-ARP grant, COVID-9 premium pay, homeless encampment provider. Any input on those items? Public input, the floor is open for items 7 through 16 on the agenda you see on the table out there. 7 through 16.
You good?
Include the scope for
Items 7 through 16, Human Relations Commission, Police Advisory Board, Homeless Encampment, COVID pay. I'd like to thank our officers for helping us. Couldn't do this without y'all.
Title only.
16, yes, 16, homeless encampment provider. 17 will be later. There will be public input opportunity for 17 shortly after we get through these. Yeah, we will get public input later on Carriage Court to Thumpa Avenue. No, that will happen at the voting session. At the first Tuesday in November, we'll have open mic for any topic on your mind.
And I'm going because I can't wait till the end because I wanted to see what you guys had to say about things. But I don't have a lot to say, and you know what I'm about here for.
I don't.
So here's my card.
Please don't.
All right. All right.
Is it an item on
We're
the
ready
agenda?
for you.
Yeah,
Go
it
ahead.
is.
What's your name?
My name is Susan Monteverdi.
Thank
You
you.
know who I am.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I'm not going to say much, except I went through the HUD supplemental for the restrictions on the HOME-ARP, and it can't be used for an encampment, period, bottom line, okay? So if you do try to use that money, you're going to have to play budget games, like take $750,000 out of the general fund, take it out of HCD budget and put it in an ARP fund to cover stuff, like $276,000 for an ART, and like $220,000 to upgrade the camp at Barber Street. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm watching it. I know the games. We'll be back.
Great.
And the other thing is, on the homeless encampment provider, do you have someone? Or is this just entitled only? So you're spending money improving Barber Street when you don't have a title, when you have a title-only provider, no one to operate it. I want to know what you're going to do. What is your plan? Is your plan to get together and talk about it and see if the city's going to take on the responsibility of operating that? And then use money, ARP money that you put into different funds, the people, to play games with the money to see if you can get $750,000 to operate it. That person also, if it is $750,000, they also have to be compliant with an audit. So I got all of this nailed. I know it all. We'll be back, and my 3 minutes is up.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else for public input, items 7 through 16? Items 7 through 16, you can see it on your agenda. The floor is open for public input. All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, officer. All right, back behind the rail. Let's see here, we got item number 7, Legislative Review Committee Report, recommendation on composition and mission of Human Relations Commission. Any input on this, and maybe we can put it on consent, or maybe we see there's a CDO coming. What's happening?
Oh, I hope there's no CDO coming.
All right.
LRC has been working very hard with this.
All right.
I do want to encourage community input, even if it's just to send us a note that says, you guys, this looks good. We're good with it. I do want to make sure people know that the timeline for the application process and interview process for this new board authority and commission is not imminent. We don't need to call the clerk about those details. We're not there yet. We got to vote on this November 2nd. So that's my input. I would love it to be on consent agenda if the rest of the commission feels that that's a good way to let the community know how supportive we are of this work.
Great. Commissioner Parker?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And many thanks to my colleagues on the LRC for bringing this together on such a tight timeline and also allowing that time for community input. I do hope we hear from folks if they have any questions or concerns. My question is pertaining to the budget. At our last meeting, myself and perhaps other commissioners discussed our interest in seeing a interim budget. I think the budget laid out here is proposed for FY23, but we're also hoping to have, a lot of these positions filled by, I think, February, including one of the staff positions. And so I was wondering if we could also get that budget for what this will cost us within FY22 in the lead up to fully funding it in FY23, if that makes sense.
So you would like to see a budget proposal from staff to get started in FY '22 earlier?
Right, and did we just, in our last LRC meeting, did we discuss there needing to be a budget amendment at some point to, Jesse's nodding, like, yeah, maybe, to fund these activities during FY '22?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Commissioner Parker, number 9 speaks to, at minimum, staff would recommend a mid-year budget amendment. That allocates $65,000 to the Inclusion Office for the HRC. So that's specifically for one staff position and some supplies, things of that nature. That would not include their full-time salary for a year. It's really half a year. That's okay.
Right. Commissioner Parker, is that sufficient to answer your concerns?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I guess I missed that because I was looking for a detailed breakdown akin to the breakdown that's provided on the last page of the PDF for the full year's budget, but honestly, that's the figure, so that we know what will be expected from us down the road in terms of that budget amendment is helpful.
Great. All right. Any other, yes, Commissioner Hool? Yes, sir?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, so does that mean that we'll have an additional, we should expect an additional agenda item, probably under new business, separate from this, that would be for that interim budget? Or would that be captured in this?
Would the budget amendment be encapsulated in this item? I believe so.
Yes, we can, yes, it would be attached to it
Yeah.
as part of the recommendation.
Okay.
It's unusual that we do it this way, so we'll verify with the attorney the correct way to do it, but I hear you that you don't want to come back and do it again, so we'll find a way to make it work for November the 2nd.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And then the stipends would also be incorporated in that, I believe, as well, right? That's what we talked about for the positions once they're filled on the HRC itself.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so with that in mind, I guess because we're awaiting that, and also because I imagine people are going to want to speak about this, I'd love to see it on consent. I feel like we're going to consent, but I think keeping it off might make sense.
All right. Commissioner Jensen?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I just wanted to, if it's not going to be on consent, I guess I could do this next time. But still, just want to thank colleagues on the LRC for doing this work and fast-tracking this. And I think this is another of those fantastic examples where we've shown the commission step up, the community step up, asking for something like this and working with commissioners, and also staff stepping up too. I think it's one of those kind of perfect examples when we have staff, elected officials, and the community all working together to create good policy. So congrats on that.
Great. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I guess I would be remiss if I didn't comment after serving on this committee. I really think that the questions or the concerns that Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Hull have brought up, I hope that we still see the magnitude of the work that was put in to this process. It was a good process, and I'm glad it's on the agenda.
Great. All right, so this will stay off consent, but it looks like it has a good head of steam behind it. No brewing CDOs yet, so that's delightful. Number 8, new business, the North Oconee, Middle Oconee Reclamation Facility Improvements Award of Contract. Any input on these pretty substantial awards for facility improvements? Any questions for management? We can go ahead. I know we've talked about these over time. They're coming up. Yep.
Consent?
Any consternation? Consent. All right. Yeah,
Want me to
question.
ask a
Yeah,
question?
Commissioner Hool, yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yeah.
since you've lobbed us the softball, I'd like to invite staff to maybe just give a brief rundown of why this very significant expenditure makes sense for the benefit of the public, because it is a substantial use of dollars.
Yeah, Manager Williams, just a summation of what we're doing here.
Sure, absolutely. And I will say that I know in the budget process, the commissioners are very cognizant of the balances that we carry, and this is an expensive undertaking, about $30 million. And this has been planned and been a part of the 5-year service delivery plan that you approve and allocate, and that goes into funding, figuring out the rate calculations and how we do that. These water reclamation facilities are basically sewage plants, as people commonly know them. They're complicated pieces of machinery, basically. And I think the commission, and Commissioner Hamby was here back when I think you spent close to $200 million on those three about a decade ago. So we're going back into it. Not only that, we're staying, obviously compliant, but even ahead of the curve with phosphorus polishing and the recycle water program that you've approved for us to pursue, and putting, the filters in there that uses less chemicals, the pump stations and the pipe to have the recycled water. Staff are negotiating memoranda of understanding with potential users of the recycled water, including the University of Georgia. So this is a reinvestment in our physical plant. And I think some more good news in all of this is that we're not going to borrow the funds to do that. We've got the money. The ratepayers have helped to invest in that. We're going to save on interest expense, and we're going to get this work done. And so this is in keeping with the last few years where you have noted that we've carried some pretty large balances in our public utilities department, and now we're really starting to get some capital delivery of projects out there, and this is a significant one that's caught your eye.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And I'll just piggyback on what Manager Williams is saying about this and about how important it is, and about how important it is for this body and the community to see what's going on here. Certainly, you brought up the recycled water. I remember a situation where we were, and this was before Manager Williams was here, but we were shortlisted for almost $1 billion economic development project. I think it was a microchip company. We were shortlisted, but as microchip companies go, they need very, very pure water, and they weren't able, and we didn't have enough water to satisfy their requirements for them to use without sacrificing the drinking water for our citizens, and we just couldn't afford to do that. But had we had recyclable water at the time, now the microchip company may not have been able to use the recycled water, but some other businesses and industries might have been able to use it, so you could have shifted it over. So it's important. I'm looking forward to how that progresses and how that's going to help us in our economic development efforts, because we really, that's a big focus as a community, making sure we have enough water to meet our personal drinking safety demands, but also enough for our economic development, job-producing demands as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hamby. Points well taken. Anyone else move this to consent?
Yes.
Okay, great. Madam Clerk, number 8 to consent. Number 9, a resolution to adopt the Northeast Georgia Regional Solid Waste Management Plan. Something.
Consent.
Yep.
Consent.
Okay. Any consternation?
We had a
Any
work session.
CDOs simmering? All right, great. Madam Clerk, number 9 to consent. Number 10, community benefit agreements submitted by agencies wishing to qualify for rent reduction for use of ACCGov facilities. Any input on the, yes, Commissioner Parker?
Just a question of clarification at first. So if we were to approve option 1 in the, of the options, I'm sorry, that would approve the CBAs as written for all of the organizations. Okay. I ask because, well, it says that doing so would result in an inconsistent process that is likely to result in the type of leasing disparities that were the catalyst for the development of the unified leasing policy. I think doing so to address redress the way that organizations like East Athens Development Corporation and the Hancock Community Development Corporation were historically discriminated against with regards to these leasing policies, so that they may catch up fiscally from some of the ways they were set back by these historic leasing policies, is really correcting the disparities that once existed rather than exacerbating them. And it can be something that we could always revisit in future years, but for the time being, I would like to see us do. So I will be making a motion that we approve the CBAs as submitted.
Okay, so.
Yeah, just to let y'all know.
Approving, yeah, supporting
Yeah.
the staff recommendation. Yeah, the number one.
Option one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I have a question. The junior league did not submit a CBA and is ending its contract with Athens-Clarke County for overseeing the Taylor Grady House. Do we have any plans moving forward on how that property is going to be managed, or will we be discussing that as a body?
Yes, there are some options here that staff have laid out there, and we'll work with y'all in whatever form you'd like to determine the future use of the facility.
Okay.
So you could lease that to another non-ACCGov entity, you could leverage it for economic development projects, you could place a facade easement on the facility to preserve the historic nature of it and then sell it, or you could repurpose it for ACCGov needs.
So would if we were to go with like leasing it, would that be an RFP process?
Have to be.
I'm not sure, but we certainly would want to be, I would think, open to taking some responses to what could go there. But we could work with y'all on that and determine what you'd like to see there, get some
Okay.
direction from y'all.
Yeah, that's good. Not really a part of this,
I
but
mean, I'm
you're
just-
good for now.
Okay.
I
mean,
know they have a
presume-
meeting organized coming up to
Yeah,
go over
yeah,
there.
I have plans to meet with some of these
Okay.
folks.
Commissioner Denson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate staff getting this together and all the organizations submitting this and serving on GOC when we came up with this process and did a lot of work for it. And because of knowing that process and the amount of work to go through and really look at these, I do think in the future, and I understand we have our time commitments and we already have a lot of stuff on our work sessions, I do think it would be very helpful for us to have work sessions in the future when we get to this point, when we're renewing these leases, just so that we can maybe even be able to hear from the applicants who are submitting the CBAs and have a little bit of a conversation maybe, because I think it's especially with this all being one item and we have 6 CBAs all kind of lumped into one item. I think it can become a little bit confusing and convoluted possibly. So just in the future, I think it might be best for us to just rethink this process and not just simply have an agenda item, put it to an agenda setting, and then voting 2 weeks later. I think it would be good to have some presentations and some discussion around this, even if that means that we put a committee together, honestly, so that all this work doesn't have to happen, like we do for appointment to our boards or authorities, maybe something like that, where we have a group of commissioners meet with them and kind of go through these things, so.
Yeah. Sounds like a good idea to me, yeah. Any other input or consternation? Can option 1 go on consent? Option 1 on consent?
I'm not okay with that.
Keep it off, okay. All right, moving right along. Number 12, SPLOST 2020 Project 1, Facility Space Modernization, Subproject 1, Judicial Center, potential site designation and associated due diligence, and Hickory Street parking deck planning and preliminary engineering. Any thoughts? Consternation, CDO, Brim, yep, Commissioner Link?
We've had many work sessions, executive sessions about this property, and, the Judicial Center is a SPLOST project. It was approved by referendum, and the SPLOST, or the Classic Center Arena, is also a SPLOST project approved by referendum. Both of these facilities will need a parking deck. I feel that it's in our best interest to move forward with partnering in the parking deck, because this body will have a say in the design of that building, some possible multi-use function of that building, as we move forward with the location of our judicial center as well.
Commissioner Davenport?
So item number 12, Yeah, so item number 12 just literally deals with the engineering, correct? Okay. I just want to make my colleagues aware. It just deals with the architect and the build out of a potential parking deck and judicial center, but not just for the site.
If I could clarify.
Sure, yeah.
So there are two things Commissioner Davenport alluded to. So the first is the initial partnership with the Classic Center Authority on building a joint parking deck for the preliminary design and engineering. That's about $425,000, and we prorate that between us and them. You know, and while it doesn't commit you to building the deck, you're on your way to doing it if you're going to enter into that agreement and spend those dollars and time to do it. And so we don't have a ready source of funding yet to fund that portion of the deck. That's one decision that you're being asked to make. And the other decision is to spend some dollars from the Judicial Center to do some additional due diligence on the site to see if that site would be appropriate for a potential judicial center. So we're stopping short of naming that as the site for the judicial center, and we've consulted the site selection committee, which Commissioner Davenport's the chair, and he may want to speak to that. And they stand ready to help however you would like. But what we think is after this preliminary engineering design on the deck is done, which will take several months and probably put us into the spring, if you're doing some additional due diligence, you'll know more about the judicial center site. I don't know if we have enough information to just say, right, once and for all, this is it. And so that will just give you additional information in the spring, and when you make a formal commitment perhaps to the deck, you can make a decision after some additional work's done for the judicial center, if that makes sense.
You good? Cool.
Thank you, County Manager Blaine. He summed it up pretty well.
Cool. Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I guess I'm continue to be frustrated with looping these two topics together, and I plan on having a commission-defined option that'll basically be dividing the question, but I'll get with staff to make sure I do it appropriately. It looks kind of to me like one option's going to be option 1, A, B, C, E, and then dividing the question so that D, that talks about the judicial center and with its own E. But I'll get with staff to make sure that that would be the appropriate division, but I'll have a commission-defined option along that
Mayor
line.
Pro Tem, I have
Great.
a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner Thornton.
I just wanted to respond to Manager Blaine's last comment that he hoped it made sense. It doesn't make any sense to me to have the Judicial Center and the parking deck tied together. I think that what is fair is that those should have been two separate entities. I don't know what Commissioner Wright has in mind, but I want to go on record that I think that is, I don't think that is fair to those of us that support one thing and may not support the other. And when you say that you can make changes, once the train is moving down the track, it's gone. So I don't think it was fair to put those two together. It seems like you've taken away some of my voting power, and I don't know whether that was intentional or just the way it goes, but I just want to go on record that I do not support putting both of those projects together.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other input? Yeah, Commissioner Henry.
Sure, thank you. And I too would think that they would need to be separate. They're two separate items. I certainly am supportive of partnering with the Classic Center on parking needs for their facility and for the community's facility as that area grows down there. And the way I read it, we would need to come up with a $220,000 price tag to help get that jump started. I'm a bit concerned. The statement was made, we're on our way to doing it once we commit that money. I would be concerned about the same thing with the Judicial Center, that once we do that, we're on our way to doing it. And I'm concerned about it, y'all, for this reason, for a lot of reasons. For one, And it's not necessarily speaking out against downtown or what, but I do think we have a process in place as to how we choose where these projects go. This is the most expensive project on our SPLOST list for this package. And certainly, when at least, when I look at where SPLOST projects go, I hope you do too, that you want to put them in areas of town that need help, that haven't always had the attention, and that could benefit from having something like a courthouse in the vicinity. And like I've said many times, I don't know if downtown 100 years from now will be all the way down Lexington or all the way down North Avenue. I would expect the way things grow that might be the case. So I think we're selling ourselves short if we don't go through the process. I will also say, yesterday we received an email from Crystal Corbin about some definitions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And part of those definitions, as I'm reading it, is you've got to ask the question, where are we going with this? And in this situation, we're not even asking the question. We're not putting the question out there. We're not putting other areas out there that could benefit. And I don't know how that fits in to those definitions that we received yesterday. So I'm supportive of dividing the question and look forward to the Site Selection Committee doing some more work.
All right, Commissioner Denson?
Thank you. And this is just to ask staff on facts and issues number 2, which this came up during the work session. Many times we've talked about this. The efficiencies that might be realized, which I think is what, because we're all right. These things are not necessarily connected. They're 2 separate projects, but they could be connected, I think is why. So, but I think that thing that could be is the efficiencies there. So I wonder if staff could come up with an estimate for the cost efficiencies that would be realized. Because I think a number there would be helpful I think we all realize there could be efficiencies, but it'd be really helpful to know what those efficiencies actually could be and what the value would be.
Well, that's part of the due diligence we were asking to be done, because y'all have asked that question, and I think wisely so. And then, so we'd have the design professional for the Judicial Center working with a design professional for the parking deck to say, how could this all work together? You save money on stormwater, utilities, streets. That's part of the question that we would look to ask the design professionals.
Thanks. Commissioner Devlin, okay. Okay, any other prognosticatory statements to be made? Yes. Commissioner Hool?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm dealing with some situation here. I guess I'm sorry, y'all. If you had something, Commissioner Devon, to report, please go first.
Yeah, anybody else?
But I just want to make a comment to my colleagues.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Technically, I know by the language that when you read it, it seems like these 2 projects are together, but literally it's just mainly, I just think you just focus on the parking deck, building out the parking deck. We have a committee of judges that are working with architects to help build out whatever this judicial building is going to look like. And what item number 12 is speaking for is saying, while we're looking at the parking deck in that area, let the architects as well and staff look at a potential, like item number, I just lost it, but one of the options says the potential for a judicial center. So don't get hung up that they're necessarily tied together, but there's a potential down the road in the spring for us to come back and say, okay, well, this is a viable spot where we look at, staff efficiencies that are realized and stuff like that. So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioner. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I wanted to echo something that I think Commissioner Hamby brought up last meeting, which is that hopefully this is not just a parking deck. That seems really pertinent to me. I mean, we're building a very large structure here, and whatever it is, I hope that it includes more than just parking. Secondly, I hope that our parking deck that we're building is one with the future in mind. So there's a lot of, it's built to be EV ready, which will be more expensive up front, but far less expensive than retrofitting it later. And the third thing is that I agree with my colleagues thinking that it makes sense to vote on these separately. Logically, I do think that makes sense, although I anticipate supporting both because I do believe that this is the best location for the judicial center, not just because of the efficiencies that can be realized, but also because for the people who need access to the courthouse and are low income, which is a lot of people who cycle through there, a downtown location, I think, is most beneficial to them, especially with how proximate this is to the multimodal center. Thank you.
All right. Probably not going to put that on consent, so, all right, that's okay. Next up, number 13, Government Operations Committee review of recommendations of the Police Advisory Board Development Task Force. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Sure,
Henry.
I'll just make some comments, and I will be discussing this more at the voting session, but certainly appreciate the Police Advisory Board Development Task Force for helping us have some good discussions about this, very important discussions about this. And we looked at the charge that the mayor put forward to us to examine the recommendations from the task force. And the Government Operations Committee has come up with a ordinance that you see before you that allows for the development of a police advisory. I forget what we're calling it. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Police Advisory Board. Yeah. And it has in the ordinance a list of duties that we're anticipating that this board start off with. Part of those duties is, allowing the board to help us to determine what staffing levels, if needed or if needed or warranted, and helping us make a decision on that, among the other things that you see there that they're tasked with helping us do. We do put as the LRC has done with their committee members, we have put in a stipend with the anticipation that we examine stipends, a small stipend, $25 for the regular monthly meeting, with the anticipation that we also establish that protocol for all of our other boards and authorities. We have a lot of community members that do spend a lot of time helping us make this community better. And certainly their time is valuable and appreciated, and helping provide for some sort of relief for that is something we should be looking at. So at any rate, it's before you. Welcome any comments between now and the voting session. Appreciate the other committee members that helped draft this legislation. I think it's heading in the right direction. Is it heading in a direction that everybody's going to be happy with? I don't know, but it is something that we've gotten started. It's something that as we select the board members to be on this advisory board, that they will help us continue the work of doing this very, very much needed work. So thank you very much.
Right. Commissioner Lane?
Yeah, I know that this kind of took a while to get off the ground, but it needed that time. We needed that discussion to really get this right, and I feel like we did. As Commissioner Hamby pointed out, we're allowing this committee to decide the staffing levels. That'll be the first task of the committee. And the committee itself will be made up of 9 citizen members who are to reflect the diversity of our community, but it will also include 5 non-voting ex officio members who are representatives of our law enforcement community, as well as definitely an attorney to assure that any recommendations that come out of this body are within the boundaries of the law. We're including a sheriff representative, from the warden, and a commissioner, someone from this body to be on this committee, so that it is truly thoroughly informed. And so I feel good moving this forward and allowing the committee to do the further work to get this fully off the ground.
Great. Commissioner Denson? Or if you were first, whoever was first, it's okay. Commissioner Wright, there's time for everybody.
Okay.
Ladies first, my bad,
Anyway,
my
thank
bad.
you. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see this coming forward. I do believe we have a history line that can be added in, Manager Williams. I believe it was January before the pandemic that we had the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement do a work session with us. And so I think that's also worth putting in that timeline, if you can capture that. We were in the planning area, and it was very helpful. I'm glad to see that GOC got that as well, because I think only 2 of us who are here today as commissioners were at that work session. So anyway, I think that that's worth putting in there, and I think spinning off of that was where the mayor got this task force set up too, so appreciate putting that in there too. Been working on it a long time.
Great. I'm afraid to call on anybody. All right, Commissioner Hool.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for battling through your fear. I have 2 questions. One of them is, and I might have misunderstood this, but because I didn't watch all the meetings, y'all had a lot. But it seemed to me like the question of whether to include the probation office or not, it was decided to leave them out because the probation office is under corrections. But as I understand it, there's a probation office under corrections, and then there's also a county probation office. And so I'm wondering if we should, why the decision to not include the county probation office?
I'm not sure there's a probation office under corrections. There's a separate probation office that works under the Superior Court.
Indeed, yeah.
We
Yeah.
have the diversion center with corrections, but that's the only separate entity, well, sub-entity with corrections that I'm aware of.
So I guess the probation services that are under the municipal court that address misdemeanors and things, was there, I remember that being brought up in one of y'all's meetings, and then I don't remember.
I think it had
Which
to do
one?
with
Sorry.
some of the ones that are under the state purview versus the ones that are under the local purviews. The way I'm trying to remember that discussion as to Commissioner Denson was the one that offered those ex officio members. So he may
Yeah,
have.
I mean, I guess, yeah, just to be clarification that, so our current probation office would not be represented then under corrections, yeah.
I'm going to call Assistant Manager Edwards because he was staffing the committee.
There you go.
We talked a lot about corrections and the difference between the Atlanta model that the Attorney's Office used to generate this ordinance. And so it is very different. Corrections is very different in Atlanta. So the Attorney's Office talked through that. There wasn't a lot of discussion on probation, but I think Attorney Drake might be able to answer your question. But I don't remember a lot of conversation about probation.
Oh, I mean, I guess I think I understand where Commissioner O'Hoole is going with this, so I wonder if it's just, if we could include the probation office under this too, since it is part of the public safety apparatus.
So a CDO possibly simmering to include the probation office.
Not necessarily attached to making a CDO as much as looking to understand kind of the rationale, but if we are adding corrections, which it seems we are with the warden having a representative there, then it would seem to me to make sense to include the probation office as well if it's operating separately from the purview of the sheriff or corrections or ACCPD.
I certainly don't mind staff adjusting the report that's been signed to include probation if that's warranted. I don't. You know.
Well, what we got right now is a recommendation from the 5-member GOC.
Right.
And as far as amending that, I think the cleanest way would just be for this body to do a CDO, if that, not to complicate things. But.
So Commissioner Hoole, if you want to do some research into probation and whether or not you want to include it, and just present a CDO.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds good. I'm seeing a lot of nods, so, okay. And then the second question I had, more minor detail, but when we were discussing this in HRC, we settled on the idea of the secretary being a staff function instead of a board member function, just because it enables someone to really be focused on taking detailed minutes in a body that's going to be particularly active, and anticipating that this might be similar just curious if that had been brought up by y'all, or if that's part of what the board is going to look at when they're making their staffing recommendations.
Go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry, Manager Williams, I directed your assistant manager to go ahead.
So, reading the report, the GOC is recommending that the newly assigned committee talk about the staffing of the committee.
Okay.
So that hasn't been decided yet. In terms of talking about minutes and other things, that's not been a part of the equation because, the auditor or the monitor or whatever that committee decides to create has not been created yet.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I think we also discussed having the other committee, the other justice, that person helping get the ball rolling. So.
And if I might, and Assistant Manager Edwards, please correct me if I'm wrong. So you just mentioned whatever the committee creates, but the committee will give a recommendation back to this body for your approval on the final form.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I guess where I'm heading with this is, in this next stage of development of this, having an accurate record ensured, the way staff has done a really great job of with all of our committee meetings. If people on this body think it would make sense to have that be a staff function, at least in the beginning, versus just a member of the board.
I would assume that these meetings would be public and on, now that we have meetings on WebEx, that there would be that video record as well. But yeah, we were very adamant that the committee itself be the ones to have that discussion. And there would be a representative of this body on that committee, so that is a discussion that could be brought up.
All right. Commissioner Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I just, wanted, which I think we've alluded to here, but I don't think it's been said explicitly, is that that this is now being titled the Public Safety Civilian Oversight Board because it is including the Sheriff's Office, Corrections, and also the Police Department. And that all of those entities will have an ex officio member on the committee. And I definitely appreciate all the work that my colleagues on GOC did and Chairman Hamby and that we will all continue to do because the big thing here, and I know that at times this has been controversial with some folks in the community, but I think we all understand that there is a lack of trust in a lot of parts of our community with the police, and then that has also created at times, a lack of trust sometimes from the police with members of the community who maybe are criticizing. And I think that this gives us a real chance to try to deal with that in an open and explicit manner that says we want to have a public safety apparatus that serves this community and that the community trusts. And I think it's a desperate need that not only our community needs, but honestly across the entire nation and the world. So I think trust is the integral thing here. So I ask that our residents, community members, no matter what your background, your ideology is, that you just trust this just even for a moment. Give it a shot. Let's see if this improves things. And I think that it will. And I think that it will actually benefit the police department because it's going to make their jobs easier and make them more effective because people in the community are going to trust them, be able to work with them, and vice versa. So I'm very excited to see this move forward. And I ask our entire community just to trust each other and to give it a chance.
Anyone else on this one before we move forward? All right, that'll stay off consent, of course. We might have something from Commissioner Houle. 14, HOME-ARP grant agreement. Any input? Any CDOs? Yes, sir.
I just want to make I'm sorry, I messed up here. I took number 3 off the consent agenda, and I was confusing it with this one. So this one's off consent agenda, so I don't mind putting number 3 back on consent if the board agrees with that.
Okay, so number 3, the HUD Continuum of Care
Right.
Homeless Assistance Grant.
Sorry about that.
Put that on consent. Got it, Madam Clerk. All right, back to number 14. Commissioner Hamby, would you like to speak to this one?
I'll
Okay,
get
cool.
some questions to Manager Williams.
Oh, okay, on this one. Gotcha. Any other input for now on this one? Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. I was able to sit through a meeting with some of the DCA folks last week, and they brought up that there's actually been some changes with the way the home grants are working, specifically through ARP, opening up some more potential to work with homeless entities and kind of expanding out. I know this was spoken to a little bit, but expanding out some of the ways it can be used and utilized. So I do hope, I will email something out later on that I have some of my notes from that meeting. But yeah, maybe we can be digesting that over the next 2 weeks too, about how we can be approaching this a little bit differently than we have in years past.
Okay. Any other input on this one for now?
And I will say,
Manager Williams. Yeah.
This is Manager Jones, correct me, but there has to be an allocation plan developed for the use of the funds, and that would be submitted to HUD as a substantial amendment. In any case, that allocation plan comes back to you for your approval, so nothing gets decided until you're done with that.
Great. Thank you, sir. All right, moving right along. Number 15, COVID-19 premium pay and retention bonus. Any thoughts on this one? Title only, so Commissioner Holt?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, just since this is sitting as title only, but we've had a lot of discussions and work sessions and retreats, what is staff currently looking at? I saw the email that we got with the total breakdown, but what are we looking at in terms of that figure for the hourly raise versus the bonus? I think I saw the bonus is expected to be 1,000, and then.
Yeah, so just for everybody's benefit, so at the work session, which folks can see, there were some sensitivities, some different amounts for both the bonus and premium pay that were presented. And somewhere in the middle of what we thought we heard would be $1.75 an hour for each hour worked, either in person or handling materials handled by others from March 16th, 2020 through June the 30th, 2021. And then $1,000 retention bonus, if you will. And I know the attorney and staff are still working through the definition of that. I hope to have that to you here quickly.
Thank you, Manager. And then I guess my follow-up question, and maybe this is partially what you were alluding to, regarding how we're going to define retention of employees who were temporary but worked the entirety of their temporary season. Is that also to be determined, I guess, how we'll build those in?
So with the premium pay, if you're still employed with us and you work those hours as classified, then you would be eligible for that premium pay. And then with the bonus, the retention bonus, if you will, we are working through that. We want to speak with HR and the attorney, make sure that we're on the same page on that.
And so would that mean that the premium pay would also not necessarily be included for temporary people? Sorry, I was understanding that premium pay for temporary people would happen, and the question was whether the bonus could, but is it actually a question of whether either can for temporary folks?
The premium pay would be for temporary folks that, like for instance, poll workers who come back and work with us now, you know, who logged those hours before and they're on the payroll, we could convey that to them. But for folks who separated, I think, from the organization and are gone, you know, we're not going to track them down to pay them. It would be, if you're still with us, permanent, temporary, work those hours, qualify, you get paid. And the retention bonus, we're trying to figure out, because it's sort of a prospective thing, how we would do that with temporary employees.
I know we've got a meeting to discuss this Thursday, but, you know, at least Pappas in my office has been looking at this, and I don't want to misquote her, because we had a brief discussion, but she's preparing, as she's working through this and reading the guidelines. I think it was her understanding, and again, I want to be hesitant that, I guess there's the administrative thing of going back and finding these individuals, but that if you did work during the pandemic, even if you weren't, if they were temporary, like election workers, they were able to get the premium pay based on her reading the regs. But we haven't discussed this, what they found or financed, so I don't want to misstate that. I think it's less clear about so that's the premium pay, but I think it's less clear about I don't think they would be entitled to retention bonus if they weren't with us, if that makes sense anymore. Because that's prospective, using general funds and saying that you're going to continue to work with us. But we're fleshing that out, we'll give you guidance.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd like this body to consider that when we're talking about the lower paid hourly employees who might be part-time and things, a lot of the retention bonus, the meaning behind it is that it especially helps those folks. But if we're leaving out people who stepped up to work, essentially on the front lines as poll workers or leisure services workers last year, but the nature of their temporary position is that it ended, then.
I think those individuals would be allowed to get the premium pay. But I think on the retention bonus, the reason we're calling it retention bonus is because we'll be using Georgia, not every employee qualifies for the employees that qualify for the premium pay, that's under specific guidance of the American Rescue Plan. The retention bonus is being paid to every employee, basically to say, we recognize it's hard to keep people, we're trying to keep people. If you're using, and that's using general funds, not and it's clearly a gratuity to go back in time to pay somebody for work already done. That's the problem. Does that make sense, Using general funds, not American Rescue Plan funds.
But if they were to,
Well,
sorry to belabor this, y'all, but if
we
it's
need
a
to
leisure.
meet on this and talk about it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we can, because, certain poll workers may still be active in our system, so there's not a separation when they quit working. So we just.
That's what I said about the practicalities.
Right.
We're gonna talk through all that
That's right.
administratively.
And we'll be glad to answer your questions if you want to present us with the questions, but I'm not sure tonight we're able to answer those.
All right, email some questions, Commissioner Hamby?
Mayor Pro Tem, I have a question.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but County Manager Williams, can you just do us a spreadsheet to see exactly how much ARP money we have either spent or designated, just a one-pager?
Yes, I could do that.
And my second question is, did we apply for the first responders bonus through the governor's plan a few months ago?
Yes, Commissioner Thorne, we're aware of that, and we're awaiting, I think the mayor receives the official invitation for the portal. So we're all watching that very closely and intend to apply for that by the deadline.
Okay. Will that have any effect on what we're talking about with our local monies, or is that going to be in addition to?
Yeah, it would be independent of what you're considering here, so it would be extra for those employees that are eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hamby?
Sure, that was actually going to be my question. I know the email was sent out today about it, and I would probably suggest maybe making the recommendation that if, instead of maybe just watching the portal, have somebody call, so that the money doesn't get, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, and my understanding of that program is that we should already have credentials because it uses the credentials that were created last year, so that we should be able to go and apply to the portal. That's my understanding of the program. But my question is, I know we talked about the timing being before the holidays, and I just want to, and I've heard from employees with concerns. They want to make sure, so I want to make sure that we are on a timeline that we can basically guarantee here that we are going to be able to get this premium pay out and into people's bank accounts before the holidays.
Well, should you make a decision on this at the November 2nd meeting, I believe the first payroll in December is when staff would be able to make it happen.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I want to make sure we're still on that timeline.
Great. All right, moving right along. Number 16, homeless encampment provider. Title only. Any input on this one? I guess we're waiting to hear some info on this one, so, right? Yeah.
But I can give you
I
an
would
update.
I would like to make a comment.
Okay.
I didn't support this, voted before, but I am I'm wondering why, since this is a high profile, policy program, why it's only title only.
Go ahead, Manager Williams.
Sure. Well, so we did have a respondent, and, we had one respondent, and they have experience with homeless services, but not actually operating a homeless camp. And so we are working with them to refine the scope. It's not unlike the conversation we had earlier. We've met twice, as recently as yesterday. We're providing feedback. We're trying to simplify the scope, and qualify how many staff are involved and what the services that are going to be provided. So we simply don't have enough information to put an agenda item out there, but we're working on that, and we're hopeful in the next week or two that there's several things that have to happen. First off, ultimately a contract would need to be signed that would be based on a scope of services that we're negotiating in a budget, similar to earlier. They're going to need to have an insurance policy in place in order to operate the camp before the contract can be executed. And of course, they're going to need some startup funds to get the camp moving and operating. It's just not a simple thing to say, let's go do it. I mean, we've got to make sure that there's risk on both sides. There's services that will be provided. There are federal funds involved. But I will say that we are working very well together, I think, at trying to come up with a mutually agreed upon scope that will be in the interest of the camp's operation.
Thank you, Manager Williams.
And so my part two of that question is we had an agreement and a deadline with CSX. It doesn't seem like we're going to make that deadline.
We were talking about that yesterday with the applicant, and so they have staff that they have to hire as well. I think from the day that we sign a contract, they'll need up to 30 days to get their staff in place. We're still working through that, but yes, that's going to be something we're going to have to work through.
Any other input on the title only? All right, that concludes all of the agenda setting items. We have some planning items, but I'd entertain a recess if anybody would like one. Go ahead and make a motion.
I'll move that we have a quick recess.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Okay, yes?
one question. On that one, is that on consent or
No.
has it been pulled?
No, it's not on consent.
Oh, it's not? Okay, thank you.
Yep. Motion for how long of a recess?
10 minutes?
10 minutes. Seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. See you in 10. Clarke County Commission, Mayor and Commission is back in session. We're now going to receive reports and public input item by item on recommendations from the Planning Commission. Number 17, request to rename Carriage Court to Thumpa Avenue. Planning Commission recommendation approval unanimous. Any input on this one? Any public comment? Sorry, public comment. Public comment on number 17, Planning Commission on Carriage Court to Thumpa Avenue.
Do you want me to do the presentation first? And didn't? I think that's the way it was
Sure.
listed. It's up to you, how you
Yeah.
want to do it, but.
Sure. Go ahead,
Okay, it'll
Mr.
be
Griffin.
quick, I promise. Street name change, Carriage Court to Thumpa Avenue. You've looked at this one under a couple different iterations. We are confident that it comes to you tonight in a format that the family has considered and is happy with, but this is the proposed street to be changed. This is Carriage Court, runs south off Carriage Lane. Per request of the mayor and commission, we did send out the notices. It goes to the planning commission, and then you all hold the public hearing and vote. In this case, there were 102 affected addresses, 99 within Clark Gardens. We found no confusion with the existing street names for service delivery or emergency services, and the planning commission recommendation is to approve the street name as recommended.
Thank you, sir. Public comment on Carriage Court to Thumpa Avenue. All right, seeing none. Oh.
I was ousted from my public comment previously because the cop said that there was already 3 people, so I had to wait for the next public comment. That's what I'm here for. My name is Mara
Mayor Pro Tem, this is inappropriate. We're trying to honor a woman who was killed, and her community members and her family have decided to honor her living by changing the street name to her name. And it's not appropriate to be having this kind of comment that it has nothing to do with us.
Of course not, and I would expect that, but
I
think-
hear that, I hear that. And what we can do is we'll have 3 minutes when we're done with these planning items.
I appreciate that.
Okay?
Thank you.
So any input on Thumpa Avenue? Okay. From behind the rail, go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
Yes, I appreciate this. This is in District 4, and I appreciate staff so much and their patience. I have embraced this the best way I could from the beginning. It's taken a few rounds. I even had it grandfathered in the old renaming way, and now I know why we have a more clear policy on renaming, because the old one was a little confusing, and I got, I would say, caught up with that confusion. But we are clear now. Ariel had an untimely death of gun violence. I met with her mother and her sister to be clear and written down. The sign will be Thumpa Ave, not Avenue written all the way out, even though our nomenclature would be that way in reference to it. I had the pleasure of meeting her little son and nephew at the same time, and Ariel's sister that very day before, and nephew had a gun shot through their car. It was just devastating to see. And we want to honor this woman and the legacy she leaves behind, and I look forward to this being hopefully unanimous. And I think some of the family might have more time to be here on November 2nd when we finally vote on this.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Wright. Commissioner Hool.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Since this has taken longer than we had originally anticipated it would, and I'm glad that we took that time to get us here, and thank you, Commissioner Wright, for those remarks, and thank you, Commissioner Parker, for really spearheading, making sure that we take that necessary delay to do this work. Is it possible that we add this item to the front of our agenda, so family members who do want to come to speak don't have to sit through what may be a long meeting for this? Is that something you could bring back to the mayor for the agenda?
Yeah, we could maybe put it like at the top of new business, right after consent. Yeah, that seems reasonable, sure. Good request, thank you. Madam Clerk, can you make a note of that, please? Thank you. Any other input on this one? Thank you. Yeah, this is going to be a nice tribute. Number 18, request of Michael Burke, Quick Trip.
Okay, this is 3668 Atlanta Highway. This is a request to rezone from commercial general to a commercial general plan development. Quick Trip is the intended user of the property. CG is compatible with current general business future land use. This is a PD that comes to you largely because there are some design challenges with this property and the way it was developed, kind of almost when it was the Logan's Restaurant in tandem with the Olive Garden with kind of a common parking lot, and there are easements in place and a lot of design challenges that were encountered as the engineers and designers moved through this. They started off with a list of probably 15 waivers and were able to get it down to 5, and admittedly most of these are fairly minor. But you see those waivers listed on the screen. See the property here, current condition. The restaurant is currently closed and, closed and vacant. And you see Olive Garden to the right. And then you see the current subject property line and how it kind of works its way through the two properties. And then the proposed redevelopment, that is a different building. That's the Logans will come down, and this is a new construction on the property with modified parking, additional landscaping added, and then you see the entrance there. If I can get my arrow to come up. Here, this is a right-in, right-out only, and I'm almost 100% sure this is the alignment point for the soon to be realigned Jennings Mill Road that will come in. Signal will be moved east to that location when that road moves around to the other side of the package store that's out there today. And then just again, overall site plan with landscaping, elevations, Planning Commission recommendation. Planning Commission worked hard with the applicant. Applicant worked hard with the Planning Commission, tried to get this to the best possible scenario. They were left with one condition that would remain, and that's a requirement to modify their planting plan. And it's really a technical issue, but they've got too high of a percentage of a certain species of trees on the site that needs to be modified. So that remains as a condition, but other than that, the Planning Commission recommendation on this was a unanimous vote to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any input behind the rail, or I'm sorry, public comment on this one? Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you very much. Commission as well. I'm Eric Eberhardt. I'm with the law firm Eberhardt and Hale here in Athens. I represent Quick Trip. Also present this evening is the project manager for Quick Trip, Michael Burke. We know that the planning department has provided you some information, but we wanted to sort of give you a little bit of an introduction of what we have going on here. As you've heard, this is Quick Trip's proposed project to redevelop that vacant Logan's Roadhouse on the Atlanta Highway into a new Quick Trip location. The location is in District 6. It borders District 10. The project comes to you guys as a PD to address a perpetual easement. It's something that's outside of our control. It's a legal document that existed prior to the ordinances in Athens-Clarke County addressing parking spaces. And as it exists, it impairs Quick Trip's ability to meet the parking space regulations, necessitates approval of the PD. While QT's plan significantly reduces spaces, we're dropping 36 spaces, I believe it is. We just can't move forward without some help from you guys in approving this particular PD. We'd ask you to balance the PD, the waivers that are coming here to deal with the parking spaces with our landscape plan that you see up there, which will bring quite a transformation and upgrade this track significantly. With our plan, you're going from what is currently about 5.6% tree canopy. That's why we can't meet the 10% conserved, as there's only 5.6 now, to 51.3 tree canopy. So we're adding approximately 46%. There's only 40% that's required under your regs, so we're going over and above that. When you consider right-of-way trees, we'll end up being about 96% canopy, so it is a significant value from an aesthetic standpoint, from a tree conservation, from a tree standpoint, from just a landscaping standpoint. QT, in the end, is going to be a great asset to this community. They add approximately 24 new jobs to their communities. Year over year, they are Forbes' top 100 company to work for. They generate approximately $1.3 million in annual local and state taxes. They return 5% of their net profits to charitable organizations in their communities. In the end, QT wants to be here. This will be their first opportunity to come into Athens, and they want to make this abandoned property work. The Planning Commission has noted, unanimously approved with the one condition. We're going to be amending what we have to meet that condition. That's not a problem. It just was an oversight, quite frankly. And now it's up to you guys. If you have any questions about this before the meeting, contact me. I've got a public comment card that has my office number on it, but in addition to that, my email address, if you need, is mee@ehlawfirm.com. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Everhart. Any other public comment on this project? Okay, seeing none, we've come behind the rail. Any comments on this one? Commissioner Hool.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, since it's in District 6. So, yeah, I really appreciate all the work the Planning Commission and planning staff has done to work with the applicant, and the work the applicant has done to make this work as best they can. You know, following this pretty closely for a while, the whole reason we really end up here at all is because there's a pre-existing private agreement between the former tenant of this property and the adjacent property. And really the only remaining concern I have, because I think, you know, in general, it would be much better to have something here other than a vacant Logan's. And I'm excited to see this come in. I'm excited about the work they've done to bring in a lot more tree canopy. Certainly some of what they've gone through has raised up some opportunities and issues we might want to re-examine with some of our processes. For example, the preservation of tree canopy at 5% isn't really what we're looking for, and so they've brought that up by a significant amount. Also, I think it raises up the possibility in us getting impact fees, an impact fee program set up as an alternative for applicants in situations like this to find a way to seek variances without having to meet criteria that may not fit the retrofitting of the lot they're on. But setting those things aside for now and looking at this specifically, my one remaining question is mostly for staff. I have this kind of can of worms concern that we're addressing a kind of problematic pre-existing private agreement and wanting to make sure that moving forward on this doesn't kind of open the door for people to make problematic private agreements and then sell off one of the lots and, you know, pigeonhole us into having to make concessions and variances in the future. Does that make sense as a question?
I think it does. It's, you know, we've always told you that, in our opinion, plan developments tend to stand on their own very well from a legal standpoint. They tend not to create any, you know, issues going forward with something else that you may start to set a precedence for, because they're all unique and you're really creating your own unique zoning district based on the specifics at hand on this property. So I think I would leave you with that this one, in the 30 years that I've been here, this is the first one like this that I've seen in terms of this type of a private agreement that goes back many, many years that we had the same concern too initially, but I think in this case you're fine.
Okay. Well, with that, and thank you for that, I would invite my colleagues to support this, and I plan to support it as well in November. Thanks.
Commissioner Davenport.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I support this as well. I just got a weird question for maybe from Brad or, so like there's a ramp to Loop 10 right next door to that, and I know this is a very heavily trafficked area, and gas stations tend to be a, you know, place for people when they get off of work, get some gas, get some food. Is it possible, working with maybe with GDOT, maybe this out, to have an exit ramp from the parking lot, maybe, potentially? Is that feasible?
No.
Okay.
Directly to the ramp?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, that's all going to be limited access, so it's, and in fact, on this one, and Michael Burke with QT is here as well, who helped design this, but I'm fairly certain, there's two curb cuts here now, and with the redesign of the interchange in the Atlanta Highway, the one that is currently in this location that kind of puts you right on, you kind of immediately go into that ramp, but you're still on Atlanta Highway, and then you keep going.
Okay.
That one's closing, and everything's being moved to the east for a safety standpoint, so you're not, if you're traveling west on Atlanta Highway trying to get into that off-ramp, quite often there would be somebody leaving Logan's that you would be conflicting with in the ramp. That's going to stop with the new design. So it should actually be a much safer result when this is done.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Next up, number 19, request of Jeffrey Hawes.
Okay, this is a plan development request at 473 and 481 Little Oak Street. Property is currently zoned RS5. It's within the airport overlay. Minimum lot size in that overlay, regardless of the underlying zoning district, is a minimum of 1 acre, which is what's driving this PD request before you this evening. So they're asking for an RS5A PD, or single-family residential airport overlay plan development. Currently 2 single-family lots. The request is to recombine those and then subdivide them into 3 single-family lots. Lots are less than the minimum of 1 acre each, as I mentioned earlier, but they are still compatible with the underlying RS5 zoning standards if this were not in the airport approach zone. No change required to the future land use category with this request for plan development. You see the 2 lots here. Houses on the 2 lots right now, I believe one of them is boarded up and one of them may or may not have been recently lived in. Lots are significantly larger, certainly, than the minimum 5,000, but the proposal in front of you tonight would be to remove the 2 houses that you see here from the 2 lots, turn it into 3 lots, and build 3 new single-family homes. RS5 zoning. There you see existing additions on the left and what's proposed on the right. The proposed elevations for the 3 lots. And if you have been to the site, or if you have a chance between now and the voting meeting to go out there, this is just behind the racetrack on Oconee Street. The 2 new houses that are currently there that face the rail trail, Mr. Hall's developed those 2 lots as well, and these would be similar in style and size to the 2 that are there now. Airport Authority had this sent to them because of the nature of the overlay, and they expressed no concerns with the transition from the 2 lots to 3 lots that's being requested. Planning Commission considered it, and as we've noted on the pink sheet, they had some concerns with the removal of the 2 existing houses versus renovation to build 3 new ones. A little bit of concern with the size of the houses and the price points of them. Ultimately, after a lot of discussion, the Planning Commission recommended denial. It was a 5-4 vote for the denial to the plan development.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Public input on this item. Yes, sir.
Hey, I hope everybody is doing well. My name is Jeffrey Hawes, owner of J. Hawes Real Estate. Just wanted to kind of show up tonight to fill everyone in on basically how the denial came to me. Initially, the staff report recommended approval with conditions. Then when we met on October 7th, we had a couple of residents from the current neighborhood to voice their opinion that they wanted to keep the homes that's there and have them rehab. While I do value, and I truly respect their wishes, but just since I acquired the properties, I went in and we've looked at it from different ways as far as how we can go in and remodel, and that's just not an angle that we can actually take. It wouldn't be a remodel, it would actually turn into a full rehab where we would have to tear basically everything off the inside, outside, roof. We have a lot of foundation work that needs to be done on the homes as well. So it wouldn't be a simple remodel. It would cost a ton to go in and repair these homes to actually get them to a condition to where they can be lived in. Also, as far as the size goes, the home that's already there, that's on the right, 481, the footprint for that house is actually about 1,200 square feet bigger than everything in that current neighborhood. Even the houses that I've currently built on the corner of Little Oak is about 1,000 smaller as far as the footprint. So on 481, that home is actually out of character from the rest of the neighborhood because it's had a add-on at some point as well. So we would have to tear down at least a portion of 481 and then do something to actually make it fit into the model, what's there in the existing neighborhood. The benefit of tearing down these houses would actually allow us to build new homes and allow a family to get a fresh start if they purchase a brand new home versus a rehab on the current homes in their condition. It would also add a safety value of having someone come in to an actual new home versus one that's rehab, because, I mean, something could honestly go wrong in the future. So I think safety is the biggest thing that we're looking at by tearing down and going back with new homes as well. Another benefit would be we would have sidewalks, as we were required to put sidewalks in on Little Oak on the new builds that we've already done. So we would continue that look, which was required by planning and zoning for the initial builds that we've already done. And lastly, it would actually flow into the traditional homes that's currently there versus trying to rehab the ones that's there right now and add a driveway to fit a third, which was also recommended by some of the planning commissioners with planning and zoning. That would actually eliminate a student living look, if you ask me, in my opinion, by throwing a house in the back of these current homes to make it fit. So in closing, I would actually, when the time comes, I would I would ask that the commission, everyone would vote yes to tear down and build new homes, as we initially had a vote of yes from the planning and zoning department, and also the airport authority, which brings us here at this time, has also approved it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hawes.
Thank you.
Behind the rail.
Well, this is my district, and I think Planning Director Griffin laid out a lot of.
I'm sorry, we had
Oh,
one
I'm
more
sorry.
speaker. I'm so sorry, we had
Is there
one
a
more.
speaker?
Is there another
Okay,
comment?
yeah.
Okay, my
My
bad.
apologies. Got on into him.
Yeah, my bad.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a long evening. My name is Stella Collins, and I work with Caldwell Banker Upchurch Realty here in Athens. I am the current listing agent for the two properties on Little Oak Street that you see, the new constructions. Several weeks ago, I did receive a phone call from one of the neighbors that had been there on the corner of Little Oak Street for the last 40, 50 years. And I did have time to meet out at that location amongst other residents that had been there for a while. I believe that their interest in the opposition of these tear downs was more so catered to the informal knowledge of them being told that there were going to be 6 or 7 properties in its place. That was one of the concerns that they had, was the amount of housing that was going to come there once the two were demolished, the two current properties that are the subject properties now. And another concern to them was the community having more affordable housing. And so after we met, we talked in the heat. It was about 90 degrees. We talked for about an hour and a half, and my concern, and I expressed, you know, pretty much what we were doing at that point. And they were more accepting to what I conveyed to them. As far as the affordable housing and the price points are concerned for these two homes, we definitely try to look at what the market comps are. We're not just throwing numbers out there. And everybody knows that this past year, COVID had building supplies at $90 for one board of OSB. So, you know, when you factor in what it costs to build, what it costs to renovate, and once you also incorporate your market analysis, we try to make sure we price those. I do, you know, and I did explain to the group of individuals that were there that will remain anonymous, that one of the strategies we can do for our community to provide more affordable housing is to be more on the forefront when properties are available, or before properties hit the market, be more receptive to paying attention to what's happening. Mr. Hawes did purchase these two properties at a market price. It was not an off-market deal, and we gave the seller what they were asking. So with all that being said, when you factor those in, you always want to also factor in what you're paying for the property. There are developers in town that are buying properties for $15,000, $20,000. And those are the concerns that I have, you know, as far as getting those people in the community together to get those properties to provide affordable housing to those in need. So I just wanted to kind of give my input on the real estate perspective. And also, I lived right around the corner at 1748 East Broad Street. So I was very appreciative of that area being revitalized, as I had kids that walked the streets, and I had family members that lived over there also, and friends. So that is it. My name is Stella Collins. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ms. Collins.
Okay.
Yep. Anyone else?
Oh, waiver? Yeah.
All right, behind the rail.
Okay. I think Planning Director Griffin laid out in his description of some of the concerns Planning Commission had, things that I've heard echoed among residents of Little Oak Street pertaining to the scale of the proposed housing, the removal of the two existing buildings, not necessarily for the quality of those buildings in themselves, but the loss of the neighborhood character. Granted, whether we approve this plan development or not, that could still likely change, but with regards to my feelings towards this project at present, I think that in the next couple of weeks, having Mr. Hawes and you, Ms. Collins, if you're interested, engaging further with the residents of the area to let them know what is coming and to get input, perhaps incorporating that input into the final design of the project if possible with regards to facades, et cetera, if that is still allowable within the plan development. There may be a path forward where we could approve, but I think definitely engaging the public a bit more in the meantime is necessary before that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Okay, Commissioner Denson?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I guess just so I get an accurate, I can ask this question to Mr. Hawes or Ms. Collins if they would care to answer. With the property, the two properties that are already there on the corner of Little Oak Street, could you inform us what the going price is for those properties? And so, okay, so $450, $499. And we talked about trying to keep, consistency in the community, talking about that, and that's one of the things we go. One of the things and this is not necessarily Mr. Hawes' fault or anything necessarily like that, but if we're talking about consistency in the community when it comes to home values, going down this path is going to, already has, but is going to continue to vastly change the consistency of property values in this area, which are honestly pretty consistently fractions of that amount. And I do have grave concerns if we keep on tearing down these homes that have been here for a long time in a working class neighborhood and replacing them with these kind of buildings like this. This is going to force people out. It's going to force people out of this community. This community, that one of the very few working class, affordable communities within the city limits, the old city limits, quickly changing. So I have some grave concerns around that, and I think those concerns could be somewhat addressed. I do see that they were going from 2 homes to 3 homes. If we could get some kind of concession from the developers that one of those homes would be guaranteed to be affordable, that could help with kind of lowering the amount of increased value there, but also guaranteeing that there'll be some more affordable housing in this area. So, but I just bring that up that I have a lot of concerns about what's going to be happening to the people who already live there, their property taxes and their values soaring.
Thank you. Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have basically 2 concerns, and they echo what I heard from a lot of planning commissioners when I was attending their meetings on this. The first one about tearing down the existing structures, for me, is less about the aesthetic, although I know that is the concern of some residents and some in the planning commission, and more about just from an environmental perspective, it's always more sustainable to rebuild from what's already there than to completely tear down and build anew, or at least in almost every case. So I would think that that would be the best way to go here, especially when I believe the applicant in a discussion in one of those meetings had said that if they did go in to remodel the homes, the costs would be similar. And that was speaking to the pricing of the housing on the other end. But if the costs would be similar, I guess I'd be more interested in using the existing structures. I think Commissioner Denson raises an interesting point. If we're going to allow for a third structure to be built, which would also require tearing down these structures, then ensuring some kind of affordability to me would be essential to that moving forward. I'd have a hard time supporting this otherwise. But right now, as I understand it, we're looking at 3 houses in place of 2, and all 3 of them would be fetching a pretty high price tag that I don't think we could pretend is affordable for the average Athenian. So that's really fundamentally my concern, is that 2 or 3, but in this case, allowing for 3 structures to fetch a price of $500,000. I just have a hard time seeing how that makes sense for the community at this time. Thanks.
All right, thanks, everybody. Next up, item number 20, Axis.
Okay. This is 650 US Highway 29. This is an amendment to an existing CG plan development. This is Kroger Shopping Center. For those of y'all that it's easier to identify that way sometimes. But this is one of the parcels within the overall PD that has yet to develop. The original PD showed this as a one larger commercial structure. The applicant has brought it forward with a change to propose 2 individual buildings on that parcel instead of 1, which is what's driving the PD amendment. Aggregate floor space would actually be less than what was originally approved. You see here the aerial that is just in terms of proximity. This is Burger King. This is Taco Bell. This is the vacant lot that you see next to Barbaritos right here, and Kroger is right there. It's the one lot that is one of 2, I think, still that have not been built. This was the original proposal within the initial plan development at 7,200 square feet for a single building. This is the proposed amendment, and what this entails: 2 buildings, both smaller, one of them being an oil change facility, and then the second being more of an office type use that you see there on the right. I think we've got elevations This would be the oil change facility, which is the smaller of the two, and then the office-type use to the right of it. Planning Commission recommendation was approval with a condition, and it's really just making sure that because of the timing of which this was built in comparison to the rest of the center, there is going to be some additional stormwater requirements on this particular parcel when it is developed. It's not overall for the center, but so the condition is really just more of a clarification that it has to be provided and coordinated with our Public Works Department in a manner that does not materially impact the binding site plan. What this a lot of time means is unless it is a very passive stormwater facility that looks like landscaping, it's probably going to end up going underground so as to not start moving buildings or parking around. And so that's why it's listed as a condition. But with that, the recommendation from Planning Commission was unanimous to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Public input on Axis, Space Kroger.
Right here. Hi, Barack Zuckerman, I'm the applicant. And I just wanted to say that we're really trying to keep this almost exactly the same as the original PD. We're not really changing the amount of landscaping. We're not changing the amount of pervious, impervious. We're not changing most of it, the parking ratios or anything like that. We just wanted to make this adjustment because we have the oil change in place. Who is interested, who will come to on the November 2nd meeting, their representatives, and also to allow for the other building that's remaining to have more than the potential of retail specifically. I think we requested retail and office and medical, only because that's those are the types of tenants we're seeing in shopping centers today. That's just a change. It's been 7 years since we built the project, and so now finally we have tenants that are looking at rebuilding. Otherwise, we can't build it without a tenant. So that's why we've requested this. And the condition is not a problem. We're happy to work with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public input on Axis? All right, behind the rail, any thoughts? All right, looking good. Moving right along. Number 21, request of Scott Haynes.
This is 325 and 355 Oneta Street. This is an amendment to an existing commercial neighborhood and industrial plan development. Purpose of the amendment, this is Millworks, it's been through a lot of names, it's where Creature is. The original, or the current PD of record has a cap at 10,000 square feet on hotel as a permitted use. It also did not mention theater as a use, and I'll explain that a little more in just a minute. And I think Mr. Haynes probably will do a much better job if he's here than I will, but that's really the purpose of this PD, is to modify a couple uses within the list of permitted uses for this project, and then to add some additional plaza area and a patio at the hotel site. This is the overall PD. Pre-development, obviously, for those of you, if you've not been out there, I would encourage you to go out there and see the work that's been done, because it's pretty amazing, the transition that this property's gone through over the past several years. The building specifically in question is this one. That is the far left-hand side end, or this, here we go. This end is the proposed potential for a hotel site. The floor plates, it's a 3-story building in that location. Floor plates each are about 10,000 feet. And so it really, I mean, they're kind of bumping up against 10,000. It's not a number that's going to work. They've asked for 35. I don't think they have any intention of being that large with it. That would pretty much encompass the 3 stories. But just so they did not have to come back later if something changed. And then the theater use is associated with Tweed Recording, who is also there and is interested in doing a very small-scale recording type of place where you could sit and listen to music. We're going to classify that as a theater because there's nothing else for us to call it, even though it would be extremely small and it's inside. not an outdoor type amphitheater, but that was not listed in the list of permitted uses previously. So that's really the two changes. You see here some plaza space that did not show up in the last amendment that they would want to consider adding with the completion of Building C there, and then the patio on the west end of the building. And then the elevations, right now, that upper level, the third story in this building, I think is just all masonry block. It would be modified, and they're currently working their way through that now under a shell permit to get the glass in there. But you see right there, as a three-story building, this would be the location of the potential hotel site. And then they've added an option, so as, again, not to have to come back if they ultimately ended up here of a rooftop type facility as well. And so what you see there, that's just, I mean, it's really minor, but to go ahead and get it into the PD documents now, so if it were to ever come to fruition, then it would be permitted as part of the plan. So with that, Planning Commission recommendation was unanimous to approve.
Public input.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Scott Haynes. I work for WA Engineering. I'm a landscape architect. Here tonight to talk and answer any questions you might have about this request. This is, in our mind, a minor request. This is the fourth time this PD has been amended. We're simply asking for expansion on what is the cap for hotel space under the CN standards, from 10,000 to 35,000 square feet, to allow for a boutique hotel to occur in the building that's outlined on the screen before you. This would facilitate approximately a 50 to potentially 55 room hotel to be determined upon the final design of the floor plan. We are, as Mr. Griffin mentioned, not seeking to necessarily use all 35,000, but we'd like to avoid trips back to this body and taking up time if all possible. This building represents one of the last buildings to really be renovated on the site. Since I started working on this project in 2012, we've made significant gains. We've saved a lot of buildings out there and restored what was once a really important economic generator for the city as a mill. It is now returning to that and is producing quite a bit of economic activity today. I actually work in this facility. My offices are in the front of the D building, so I get to witness the changes that occur every day. It's been really remarkable. It's nice to come outside, smell Creature Comforts Brewing IPA on occasion. If you haven't been out there, I do invite you to come out. I'd be happy to take you for a stroll around if you'd like. As I mentioned, getting back on topic, we're asking for this change to expand for the hotel use. In addition to that, we'd also like to allow for the theater use. Although there are no specific plans for a theater, as Mr. Griffin also mentioned, Tweed Recording could have an element of audience inclusion in one of their studio spaces. And because we really don't know how that would be classified, we want to make sure our bases are covered so that we, again, don't have to come back and take up your valuable time. Just a couple words on how this might change the PD in general. We have adequate parking today under the redevelopment, so that won't be a problem. Also, looking at traffic counts, the addition of a hotel, and the trade-off from taking that space out of general office space, conversion to hotel, would represent a significant reduction in traffic. So I believe that that's of significant note. Again, I'm here to answer questions if you have them. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Any other public input? All right, come behind the rail. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, this is my district. It's actually just a few blocks down the street from my house. Oh, we got somebody.
Public comment. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Michael Smith, 147 Bryan Street, here in Athens, in the neighborhood. As Scott mentioned, they started working on this project in 2012. They acquired property, I think, in late 2016. The founding directors, especially the managing partner, has done an amazing job herding a bunch of personalities back there that are very successful and are very good at what they do. I personally support the hotel project because I'm sure there's going to be other features inside it, and also like the idea of a smaller, locally owned hotel. And quite frankly, with all the professional services back there, they could use one. So, but my support is with conditions, and I think they should be taken very seriously by the commission, the mayor and the commission, and the county manager's office. Is we've done a great deal of work in the front part of the neighborhood and synced what we're trying to do with what they're trying to do. But what we really need to do is have a mediated conversation with the property owners back there, including the rubber plant, so everybody will be on the same page. And one of those things is either Southern Mill or the rubber plant needs autonomous access, or they're going to continue fighting and continue slowing development. That's just the way it is. Way back in the day, there was a water easement approved for Bryan Street. It was administratively changed, coordinated by the county manager's office and the planning department and the engineers back there, which caused at least a year delay because the rubber plant and the Southern Mill disagreed on how to handle that. And so we need, I can't say we can approve this today or in 2 weeks, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen for 6 months or a year or 2 years. We need a mediated conversation in the neighborhood. There's also a couple other things that we need. We're having a meeting next week at 143 Bryan Street at the Woodward House. And we've invited Commissioner Link, and we invite any other commissioners that want to attend. However, we can sync these plans, but without a mediated conversation, what we think is going to happen may not happen. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other public comment on item 21? Yes, sir.
Hi there. Thank you.
Just say your name and then speak until you see the red light.
Sure thing. Thank you very much. My name's T.S. Woodward from 143 Bryan Street. I'm here representing myself as well as the owner of the property, my father, and also the business that we run together called Happy Top. I'm here to speak in solidarity with my neighbor Michael, who just spoke from 147 Bryan Street. I would just like to echo the things that he said and just to echo them, reinforce the importance of what we're asking for, which is for everyone involved to get together and work out the smaller details now so that we don't have to do it later, which I think is the point of the development. Where I want to say also that I'm super stoked about the hotel. Sounds great, and it's very much in line, like Michael was saying, with what we're doing on Bryan Street. Our small business, Happy Top LLC, is a bed and breakfast. We also host events. And so yeah, I think it's a really exciting place. As you can see on the map, Bryan Street is the little, one of the entrances for the development. So it's important, that we just think through everything. I've read the application a few times, and it looks pretty solid, but I think there could be more work done on the community part, creating the kind of community that we are talking about here, which does exist, but it needs work, and that's natural. So we're just here to speak on behalf of the neighborhood, which is very small. There's only 3 houses on Bryan Street, some workshops. So appreciate all your time, and please consider making some kind of amendment to the application to allow for what we're asking for, a mediated conversation between all of the parties involved.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public input on this item? Okay, seeing none. Behind the rail, Commissioner Link.
Yes, this is an extremely complex project that's been a long time coming and has had multiple amendments, and hopefully, you know, in asking for these minor amendments, it will prevent them having to come forward before this body in the future, should they get a tenant that fits the project. The hotel, I personally believe is a good idea. I believe this area could use a hotel, and that is a permitted use under the current zoning. They're just asking for an increase in the cap, which would allow up to 55 rooms, which is still fairly modest for a hotel. And the theater thing, I think, would allow for the recording studio to host events, small events. And if and when these uses come to fruition, they would have to conform with the parking that's on the site. So that, you know, that they wouldn't be allowed to happen unless there was parking on the site. And from what I understand, the site will accommodate those uses. I will be speaking with the folks on Bryan Street next week. I'm not quite sure what they're asking for, but I'll be finding out. I know there are possible concerns about traffic and altering the traffic pattern on the street. Those are all something that, you know, is under the purview of this government, not the developer of the lot. So, you know, I'll find out exactly what is in their mind, I guess, next week. But I did speak with Mr. Haynes today, and he answered some of my questions. And this is a really cool project, and I'm eager to see it continue to move forward. You know, it's been a boon to the neighborhood, and you know, it's in a TAD, so that the revenue generated in this project is going to be reinvested in the area, and it's a boon to the whole community.
Thank you. Anyone else behind the rail? Commissioner Hoole.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to forward an email to my colleagues that has essentially like 3 asks articulated by the residents of Bryan Street. And if I'm understanding them correctly, basically the first 2 seem to be related to traffic, and the third looks more like an ask for a community benefits agreement of some sort. And I'm not sure how much of that can be addressed meaningfully at this phase of things, but I do think it's important that we take seriously what they're asking about. There's only, I believe, if I'm correct, like 4 houses left on Bryan Street, and I think that the folks who have spoken here tonight and sent this email that I'm about to forward to y'all are plugged in with the other 2 besides the 2 buildings that they live in. So yeah, with that, I guess I'm just curious to see where that heads, but thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments behind the rail? All right, last item, 22,
Okay.
trees.
Trees and grading. A little backstory on this one, just to get you up to where we are today. This process, which generated this text amendment, goes all the way back into probably late spring, early summer of 2019, when the Planning Commission was sent a charge from Mayor Gertz that included a list of things that he asked for them to look into, which led to, you know, a lot of the work that's currently taking place right now on the inclusionary zoning with the committee, missing middle housing. There were some current development standards associated with residential development that he wanted looked at, and grading was one of those, and how you can grade within a residential single-family zone subdivision currently. That was due back to this body by November of '20. Planning Commission sent it in October, and you all received, and it was a pretty comprehensive report that included work in all the areas that they were asked to include, and what they were essentially asking for you all to do at that point was to prioritize, take a look at the work that they had done, and make decisions. You know, there may very well be things in there that you don't agree with, or it's not at the top of your priority list, and then those that are, to please forward them back so they can be put into ordinance language with any comments, if there are any, and they will send them back forward. So that happened in November of '20. We received direction through came from the mayor to the manager, ultimately to us, which is the proper process for that to move through, that there was a request to go ahead and process the grading amendment as submitted to you guys last fall in November. And so what you have in front of you is largely the same information that you received about a year ago. As part of the Planning Commission's work on that, they spent months really as a subcommittee working on this. They met with a group of private land developers and engineers, as well as they spent a lot of time working with our public works engineers and our stormwater division as well. And it was interesting that both of those groups, when they met with them, were really on the same page in very many areas in terms of supporting this type of an amendment to allow certain controlled mass grading with the intention of opening the site up and getting it closed back up as quickly as possible instead of continuing it out over an extended period of time. So this comes to you with support from our stormwater department, as well as the engineers in public works and the planning staff, but it is presented to you tonight. But essentially what it does, it allows for mass grading in RS zones as part of subdivision development up to 25 acres at a time. Right now, we only allow the roads to be built, the area necessary to put in the public streets and 15 feet on either side is all you're allowed to grade to put those roads in and to do your stormwater. You can't grade anything else until the roads are completed and have been accepted by the county. Then you can create the lots and grade them. That went into effect in 2007, so it's about a 14-year-old amendment that is in place. Honestly, we've had very few subdivisions of any size developed under this ordinance since it went in place. You know, 07, 08 is when the recession hit, things stopped. We're now getting to the point where most of those old pipe farm subdivisions are getting built out and being completed. And so I think we're assuming that is part of the reason why we were asked to do this with the Planning Commission a couple years ago. But it only applies to RS zone properties. You can still, you already can, and this does not impact your ability to grade large sites in all the other zones. You can today, this wouldn't change it. So Space Kroger, when it was built, it was mass graded at one point. You know, those things can still occur. So I think there may have been some confusion with that in terms of what this does and does not allow. But it comes forward. The only thing that the Planning Commission did not include in the amendment proposal that came from staff was there was one section. Currently, the ordinance allows for an exception to go through 25% slopes for putting in infrastructure. It's largely associated with stormwater systems and the ability to move through those slopes. And the proposed amendment was asking to completely eliminate the ability to get in those areas for any reason. Planning Commission wanted to meet again with our stormwater division before they reached a comfort level of whether to continue to allow that or not. So that's not included in this, but everything else is. And so the recommendation from Planning Commission is to approve the proposed text amendment as presented to you as part of the mayor's charge from a year ago and is now presented in ordinance language.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any public comment on the tree grading? Yes, sir.
I forgot to turn in my card.
Yep, we'll get that from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing none behind the rail. Any thoughts on revisions to the grading? Commissioner Hool.
I think there's an email going around that a number of us have chimed in on, but I'll just say that I'm still not super convinced that I want to support this, and I do also want to express a lot of appreciation for Planning Director Griffin for sitting down and explaining some of it to me before. So maybe I just need to better understand it still, but right now I'm concerned about incentivizing the development of greenfield, especially in topographically challenging areas, and the kind of havoc that could wreak on ecosystems there, and whether that's really one of the most important things we can do to drive affordable development. Thanks.
Commissioner Lee?
Yeah, I saw the email too, and I think the gist of it was enabling some provisions for affordable housing in this kind of development. Allowing some of these grading allowances if there are affordable lots in the development. And that's the conversation I would like to have. There's no doubt we do need more single-family housing, affordable single-family housing. And we need to develop wisely. And I think that's where we can, use this kind of policy as some leverage to get some affordable lots in some of these subdivisions and make for more diverse communities, more diverse neighborhoods. So that is the conversation I would like to have.
So maybe a CDO coming.
Yeah,
I'll chime in if I may, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah.
So I started that email chain after considering or speaking with some folks who are trying to kind of sell me on this policy, particularly given their experience with the cost burden associated with the policy as it currently exists, which in some topographies can be substantial. In the aftermath of that conversation, thinking about that cost savings that could come with revising this policy without any sort of mechanism to ensure those cost savings are passed on to the consumer, it is possible that while it would allow for more development in a certain sense, ease our housing crisis in that way, we could also see developers sort of pocket that extra couple $1,000s that they save off of being able to grade sites en masse and continue to develop the sort of housing we're seeing all around town that is out of reach for a lot of average everyday Athenians. I did pose questions regarding whether or not this change in this text amendment or this ordinance could be leveraged as an incentive as part of a single-family inclusionary zoning program, and have had some planning commissioners and fellow inclusionary zoning working group members, as well as the mayor, weigh in on either side of that question. And so I think that debate's going to probably go on for a few more days. Hopefully, I'd love to hear people weigh in who were part of the subcommittee that helped develop this policy. But at this time, it would take longer than, let's say, like a CDO in order to develop an inclusionary zoning policy of that sort, I imagine. So it will either be, we could pass this as is in November if there doesn't seem to be appetite among the inclusionary zoning committee to take on that work, or work that would be longer term with regards to how that might be incorporated into an inclusionary zoning policy.
Okay. Commissioner Davenport?
I just got a question. Where was this email? What's the heading? Was it today?
Let me forward it. Great. Commissioner Link?
My fear is, if we were to pass this policy without having that inclusionary zone aspect of it in place, and then we go back and add that, I think that would put us in some legal difficulty, or at least political difficulty, I guess, in that we'd be granting something and then kind of taking it away or adding conditions to it retroactively. So I would advise, if we are going to have this conversation, that we would put this on hold and see how we can fit this new tool into our desire to incentivize affordable housing. Does the attorney have any input on that? If we were to go ahead and pass this as is and then go back and say, oh, we'll only let you do this if you include affordable unit, affordable lots?
Well, obviously, what you'd be concerned about is someone might, rely on this new opportunity and make a substantial commitment and obtain a vested right where you wouldn't be able to stop that, so.
Yeah, that's my concern. So I kind of think that if it's going to take some time to develop that inclusionary aspect of it, we might want to put the brakes on this to enable them to fit together.
Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I completely agree with the intent of what everybody's saying about trying to get some incentive out of this for more affordable housing. And I'm kind of in the middle of this because I definitely see the obvious cost burdensome of this, where you have to basically go through, and if you're trying to build, 80 homes, how it could slow you down and become very, very expensive to have to do those things kind of like individually. But I guess one of the other things that we've taken on is to try to identify what we have in our zoning code, in our land use, and our planning. We've paid for that contractor to come through and look for things that have kind of caused our problem already. So I understand like us trying to find solutions to fix the problem somewhat, but there's also been policies and choices in code that have helped lead us to that, and we're trying to identify those things and try to move those things out of the way so that, and so and from my reading understanding, like this has contributed to that, at least to some degree. So, I mean, that's where my concern on not allowing this basically somewhat blanket on the zoning that we have identified here for RS. So that's my other side of the concern there for us to think about.
Thank you. All right. That adjourns our regular business, but I did promise that we would allow the person who lost her opportunity at the end, or at the beginning during the meeting, to speak, to have 3 minutes. So just, I guess, say your name and just tell us what agenda item you were going to comment on.
My name is Mara Zuniga. I'd like to state that as an immigrant, I'm used to being with adverse situations, put last and so forth, but this is basically on old business. I know that the ACCGov has in place its 22nd state of emergency. Its 22nd state of emergency. Conveniently placing it during East Plus elections and November 2 special session by mayor commissioners on issues they are going to pass, regardless of public input. Remember the 500-plus people's petition thrown out by the mayor not too long ago. State of emergency places barriers to citizens who want to attend City Hall on policies they do not agree with. Last session, some older people were placed outside with the elements even while wearing masks. Others were told not to come in, and the government placed tape on the seats here and kept people in the hallway in order to keep social distancing. Oh, but you guys were allowed to be next to each other, as you are right now, less than 6 feet apart, by the way. I find that interesting and quite totalitarian. A state of emergency gives government the power to be able to put through policies that would normally not be permitted to do for the safety and protection of its citizens. Anything can be passed and attributed to such protections. 165 confirmed deaths in nearly 2 years, supposedly attributed to COVID in Athens. However, it is not clear how many people died of COVID or with COVID. And this is good because the state of emergency can continue forever. And the mayor and his inner circle can continue to pass policies that serve just for personal gain and the inner circle. On another note, crime has risen exponentially. Robberies, assaults in the city. The mayor and the regular 5 votes, you guys are overachievers. And by the way, Mr. Denson, you can't speak for people that look like me. I am part of the minority, and I know, at least in the Spanish communities, we need protection from the police. And by the way, a friend of mine that works with the homeless told me last week that some native homeless are complaining about the incoming homeless and are contemplating leaving Athens because it has become too dangerous even for them. So let's take it from a different angle. Address safety. If not for the safety of the taxpayers, how about the safety of the native homeless?
Thank you. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, we're in adjournment. Everybody have a wonderful evening.